I'm like, I learned all about like the Rock Delar quest, and so it was interesting to kind of like get to see how some of the community reacts to stuff and sort of how those quests have developed and how it's specific on the server. So yeah, I mean, it's been good for me. I think it's been good for the server. So it just good vibes all around.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I,
I'm sorry about that. We just had a small disconnect on the stream. I think we can. I think you can live with that.
Yeah. The stream was down for 5 seconds. It's alright. Sorry, Vrograg, you got interrupted in the middle of that.
It's okay. I'm used to talking over people and interruptions.
It's all good.
Yeah, it's important that we too try to make the podcast be, you know, a mature and normal environment. We are not trying to make it be hostile. We are trying to welcome new, old, veteran players, as well as the developers if they ever want to listen in, by always keeping it a level-headed discussion, even if we feel, you know, in a negative way about the change they made or something, like the echo change. What matters is the respect you show to others that you would, want to receive from others. That's very important.
Yeah, there's definitely some bias in our last episode, but I think overall the point of the podcast isn't to like advocate it, to change this because we feel it's the way to do things. It's just like discussing things, pretty much. That's like what a podcast is about for us.
Yeah, I did go ahead and listen to the first episode, and I definitely got the vibe for it. You know, my perspective on it was definitely like, okay, here's a bunch of people, or two people that are doing high-end content, and they're talking about how changes on the server affect them. I mean, that's perfectly normal, and it's a perspective that isn't widely shared in the entire server. So I think it's a perfectly fair and just conversation to have.
Yeah. In the future, we are also gonna like try to do like discuss other topics regarding, say, like leveling, the hardcore community, and even the RP. And I think that's gonna be awesome as well.
The RP community amazes me every time I look into it. Like, I really want to cover more about it. They're just amazing. They're always doing events. There's some people that are really into it. I really love the RP community on here.
I remember when I first started playing on the server back when it had like 800 peak population. It was advertised as an RP server, and so like a lot of people you'd meet were like back then like RPers pretty much.
Because, I remember when I made my first character and like quit like almost a month after, but back then there were like 300 people on the server, and you would need to buy a glyph of the diplomat to be able to group up with cross-faction players, and people were really against the idea.
Oh, dude, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that oh man, that was that was quite the time when, like, you had to like show your diplomatic papers, be like, no, it's cool, like I can talk to you, like, and that's such a good in character, in lore reason to like team up with people from the opposite faction.
Yep.
Yeah, because you needed the glyph to even party up with other factions, I remember.
Anyone who speaking of RP, I've actually gotten some questions about this. Like, my YouTube channel like name or whatever is Vrograg Fish Slayer, and the last name that I have is like my RP background story. But I got the name because one of the first things I ever did as like an RP event, I met up with these people at South Fury Trading Company, and they had a fishing competition. And I won the fishing competition by one fish. I had no way of proving, because I was hardcore. I couldn't trade with anyone. I couldn't prove to them that I caught the most fish. But the person who was running that guild, Coon, C-O-U-N, he didn't tell me, but he was a GM. And, I told him. And the prize was a fishing pole. And he's like, oh, that's a shame, you're hardcore. I'm like, yeah, it's no big deal. And then 5 minutes later, I looked at my inventory and I had a fishing pole. And I'm like, oh my God, how'd you do that? And he just gave me a wink. And I'm like, the fuck's going on? And like those little like moments like that, like that's what just sold me on the server,
Oh yeah, the community's awesome here, man. That sounds like a really cool story. I actually put up a screenshot of you with the fishing pole on stream also.
I
Oh
did
yeah.
not know that. That's an adorable story. I love the server for stuff like that.
Yeah, that's like whenever I'm sort of like uh when I RP, I guess you could say, is I like to go fishing. I have the fishing boat recipe from Survival, which I mean that could be a whole podcast in itself. The new survival skill they have in the game, but I get on a fishing boat. Sometimes I go on the shore. Anytime someone walks up to me, I have like a whole get up. I have a fishing hat, and I just like chatting up people and telling them I'm an orc fisherman. It's fun.
Your transmog looks really good. I'm like looking at the screenshot right now.
Yep, that's the chest is called the cross-stitched vest. It is a gray drop. If you ever see it, throw it on. You can have the transmog forever. A lot of people who just focus on leveling up will sell it, never even to look at it. That's why I encourage anyone who levels up and is even remotely interested in your look, so to say, equip it before you sell it, because when you get to high level, when you get to max level, and you kind of want to change up your look, if you have a full catalog of stuff to go through, you'll be surprised, because not everyone wants to look like some kind of person that rolled around in a clown costume factory. A lot of people want to look a little bit more subdued, a little bit more low key, and a lot of those gray items, you'll be surprised. A lot of them look pretty nice.
Yeah, just imagine a Fury Warrior DPS without transmog. Absolute clan costume.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know.
Before like transmog tokens were a thing, I had like a transmog while I was a male orc. It was basically just like I had boots on, nothing else, and like the goblin hat and the cape, and I was just running around pretending I was a superhero.
For so long, I had because Zoomer, you can probably feel me on this, but you know how tough it is to get the 0.5 tier set as a rogue, right?
Oh yeah.
So my grind, my last piece was the hood. I did like the rest of the quest, and like an idiot, I didn't wait to have all the pieces first. I had to do 54 Scolomances in a row to get the hat to finish the set. And as you know, the hood's like the meta, the best piece. And so when I finished getting the set, I'm like, I worked so fucking hard for this set. I'm going to transmog everything I get for a long time into the 0.5 set because it looks cool.
Dude, I kind of have the same thing for me. Like the Belt of Never-Ending Agony from Cthulhu, I was farming it for like 7 months with like my Crucellis while being like an EU player. So I was doing like these 2 AM raids for like 7 months just to get the belt. It's just like your personal achievements. It's really nice. I never personally farmed the Shadowcraft stuff. I think I had the shoulders and the hat. But...
I remember having almost 100 runs in Scholomance on my Paladin for the Libram. Never got it.
Oh yeah. Well, if you watched Vrograg News, you would have found out that recently they just changed how stuff drops in Scholomance, so all the bosses in the end actually drop the blues they're supposed to.
Well, I have the epic one from Nexramus, so I don't need it anymore, but hey, it's a nice change for new
just
players.
letting the new paladins know it's that way when
It's
they
not
walk
that
up
bad.
to Libram, we can be like,
It's
you
not
don't
that
know what
bad,
it was
guys.
like for us.
Dude,
You know
that's
what
awesome.
you know what I wish they changed about Librams? The Retribution Paladin Libram is a world drop, and it sells at the auction house for like 600 gold. Not only poor red paladins are already like, quite laughed at in raids, they also have to spend 700 gold on a Libram.
Well, they're not really laughed at in Battlegrounds now, are they?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So what if they're really good Librams, hard to get, good for them, because I've gotten smacked by so many ret paladins. I'm like, whatever, man, like whatever.
I think it's fair to say it is kind of bugged because of the way Berserking has been scaling on Paladins, which is like on the bug report right now. I looked at it really like quick. But yeah,
It's part of it, yeah.
Yeah. But I remember like back in the day, loot tables were so like weird because sometimes I farmed like Essence of Air, and like sometimes they could drop like Scholomance books, and I was like, they're soulbound, these kinds of books, and so I was really weirded out.
I remember early on when I was, because I do have a mage alt because I like having gold, but I had a mage alt and I was doing some lasher runs, right? And just normal stuff. And then I was looting, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And I had looted, the bandages that you can only use in battlegrounds, like the Alterac bandages.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I picked up one of those on a lasher farm.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
like
What the hell?
messaged GM. I'm like, yo, you guys all right? I mean,
That's
it was
super
it
weird,
was just
man.
a quirk. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the nature. Like, I mean, the devs have talked about this. Anyone who knows about coding understands this, but like, they are using a very archaic client, and the way to build upon it is like knowledge that has to be passed down. So like, they're dealing with real spaghetti code, which is to say, you fix one thing and then it changes something else completely unrelated somewhere else. So they have quite an uphill challenge. The fact that they've gotten what they've gotten to work so far is just a miracle.
Yeah, I think I get the spaghetti code because I remember, like, also back in the day when I was doing the rank 14 grind on my rogue, all of a sudden, like, after one reset, every time I logged in, I just get netted for 15 seconds and I couldn't do anything about it. And I did like GM tickets and they couldn't really fix it until like this one guy just fixed it for me. It never happened again. And it never happened to anybody else. It
Oh.
was just me. I'd get netted every time I logged in. And I could log out, log back in, and I'd get netted again.
And speaking of bizarre loot tables, right? I introduced myself as, Vrograg was a hardcore tune, right? I was level 55 and I was in Fellwood doing what most rogues like doing, pickpocketing, opening junk boxes to work on your lockpicking. And I was with Murag at the time, and just open it up. You just get like crap in there, and then out of the blue, a T-Booze was in there, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
literally jumped out of my chair, and I'm like, "What the hell is going on?" Now this is actually something that like they meant, like they actually wanted some like really rare chances to get like I think you can get like a gut ripper on the earlier ranks of them, but T-Boost was on the table. It's very rare. It's a very short chance, but I got it. But man, you cannot believe the level of nerves I had because I had 5 levels left and I couldn't equip it till I was 60. So if I died with that T-Boost, it was gone. So like those last
Oh,
5
man.
levels were like just terrifying for me.
Yeah, I understand that, damn. But no, I remember I was doing BRD also, like to farm gold, obviously. Like the gold farm isn't like super good, but it's like the only thing I had as a rogue back then. And so I got a T-Boost too, and I thought like, this is only supposed to drop off of MC Trash. And I looked at the database. So it turns out like the high level junk boxes has a chance to like either drop a T-Boost or an Alcor Sunraiser. And like the lower level ones is just like a Gut Ripper, I think.
Yeah. I heard about the Alcors. I never got one of those. I mean, I wasn't hunting for it either. Yeah, I didn't even know it existed. And honestly, from my perspective, the best thing about really any game, but specifically WoW, is when you explore something and you're surprised by it. And like, there's tons of that on this server. So like, I'm like, oh my god, a T-Boost. And like, there was like a whole story. There were literally people in the hardcore guild who used to call me like the orc with the fire sword, even though I had never equipped it. Like I was like a legend for like a month back then.
Yeah. I think I faintly remember. You know the blue T-Boost model you can get from Light's Hope Chapel?
I think I remember hearing someone said you want to get the blue lightsaber and the red lightsaber. Someone told
Yeah.
me that, but I didn't know what they meant.
So there's a quest for, like in Light's Hope Chapel, you basically just kill Balnazar and Strat Undead. And then you can turn it in and you can pick like between a few options, but everybody just picks the Argent Offender or Offender Defender something. And it's basically just a blue T-Boost. And I was using that with
okay.
Transmog on like T-Boost for a while as well. It looked really cool.
Yeah, that's I think the T-Mog I use for my blades now is do you know the Phantom Blade? It's like that semi-translucent blue with like the glowing effect on it. That's the one I use. I'm a big fan of it. I think I might have given you a screenshot. They look green, but that's because I'm in Nax when I took that picture. But they're really cool.
Oh wait, I think I have the picture. Is it this one right here?
I'm not looking at the stream. Should I be looking at something?
I mean, I did
It
make
helps
like
if you
a.
look, because you can also read comments. But yeah. Oh, that picture. You're very green.
They look very green.
Link where I should be looking in our chat so I know where to go.
I can take a quick screenshot for you. Oh, yeah, that
Thank
works.
I imagine there's a little bit of a delay. Oh, okay. So if we're looking at the
green armor.
So that green picture of me, there's another legend of another version of Vrograg called Rond Greenhand, who is Ren's cousin who follows the green dragonflight. There's like a whole short story and everything I wrote, but that's his little getup right there. I tried to get a bunch of green gear. That's like the Black Knight sword. It has like a green tint to it. And so sometimes when I'm doing dragon related RP, I put on that set. You notice I have a little a little eye patch just like Ren too.
It's not the topic of the stream, but I want to ask really badly. I've kept seeing things about your shaman being like some red dragonflight related, like you want items regarding.
I haven't finished the RP. I've been really busy with working on the news program, but my shaman Obamsawim got the red dragon scale set, which is really great, and just happened to get like a lot of red pieces, and I'm like, she's like a resto shaman, likes healing, and BWG's lore is that we're servants of the red dragonflight as well. That's why we're warring against the Blackwing Guard. The Blackwing Dragonflight. So she's like a dragon mystic. She's sort of a servant of Alex Strauza. So even if I get better healer gear later, I'm probably going to keep that transmog. They're very similar. The red dragon shoulders are very similar to the shoulders you see in the picture now. Just imagine them red.
You see, the lore of Blackwing Guard confused me because on my first ever raid, I remember having Maxi being referred to as an egg incubator for Nefarian, and I thought that we love Blackwing Guard, Blackwing Lair, and like Nefarian and all that.
Yeah, I remember putting you on blast in the Discord. I'm like Tawney, we're against the Blackwing Dragonflight. Maxi's like a friend, so and she likes to troll us by saying she's the husband of Nefarian. So the headcanon is that Maxi is having a lover's quarrel with Nefarian. So that's why we raid with her.
I see. Thank you. Well, about half an hour have passed. Should we go to the rogue tanking section?
We can look a bit into that. I did throw up a video of you like soloing the Frostmalls earlier, but yeah, the sound was a bit off. I'll have to like look into that next week because I can't really do that from OBS.
While we look into that, can we talk about what is rogue tanking for someone who never seen a rogue before or a tank before? What is a rogue tank?
Okay, so let me start by saying everything that I learned and know, I just want to give credits and complete shout outs to Guru Blade, who is really the first person to like really be sweaty and work on this. This all started about during class changes. Now, during Classic, there actually were some rogues that tried doing tanking to minimal effect. The big thing was that outside of evasion and maybe doing like a subtlety build that had Ghost Strike, you were still going to get hit and you still had to account for that. But rogue tanking really became a thing when they did class changes and they added the ability Flourish. Flourish is a new finisher for rogues. It gives them 20% parry. And the way Classic's coded is that if you can get to, I believe there's some debate still, Fugger and I are talking about this, but we believe if you can get to 102.4% avoidance, you will be unhittable by raid bosses. And of course, lower the closer it is to your level. And of course, even a little bit more lower if it's under your level. So there's two main schools of thought about rogue tanking. There's definitely a build in the meta right now for certain bosses in raids. They only do physical hits. And if you can get to avoid cap, and you can do that with the gear if you have Flourish, you just don't get hit. and then it's just about managing threat. So when I talk about the meta build, a boss like Patchwork, a boss like Resuvius and Lotheb, they're all ones that have like strange mechanics to them. Um, Patchwork having Hateful Strikes gives you a bunch of threat. Um, Resuvius has the janky mechanic of MC that's not about giving you threat, but it's just about avoiding mind control. And Lotheb, if DPS get the spore, then threat really doesn't matter. Now does it? So for people that are progressing in Axe, or people that just want an easier time than dealing with janky mechanics or big gear checks, you can utilize an avoid capped rogue to essentially either be an off tank or a main tank, depending on the boss, to never get hit. It requires full buffs, requires things like agility totem, kings, which should be noted that on our server, we lost world buffs, but we have the ability to mix paladin and shaman buffs. Some of them don't, but so that's one type of tanking. The other type is more built around solo builds. So as you're leveling up, you'll use flourish, you'll stack a bunch of agility. And I know the video wasn't working, but it's really great for rogues. You know, anyone who's done any amount of even classic, you know, you go to solo and elite, and you'll watch your hunter friend next to you just completely demolish an elite. You'll watch your mage friend demolish an elite because they can kite, because they can do stuff. You know, even warriors can do it because, you know, they have mitigation. But if you're a complete you know, a normal rogue, like a combat rogue, they're just gonna slap you. You have to burn all of your cooldowns to usually get down an elite. But with a rogue tank build where you utilize things like Ghostly Strike, you use things like Flourish, things that get your avoidance such that, like, yeah, you might get tagged like 1 in every 20 hits, but that's way better than doing it combat. And in the meanwhile, you just kill the guy. So it actually left room for like rogues to like be able to do some content solo. So from that point of view as a rogue tank, all the way up to like the more meta, I'm avoid capped, I'm going to do raid bosses, there's all this new space for rogues to try to get some gear, go out and try tanking. And it should also be noted the big cherry on top, this is the thing that Guru and I were waiting on for like months, was this agitating poison. It's a poison that when it procs, it gives you a little extra bit of threat, because, you know, anyone who's knowledgeable about the back end of threat generation on rogues, they always have a 0.8 threat modifier on everything they do. So the threat poison actually helps you grab and maintain threat. So, you know, I've done Patchwork and Resuvius as a tank or off tank. I've actually just last weekend, I was really excited. I off tank Trash and Nax because we were short on tanks. And
oh yeah, that was incredible.
I gotta tell you, that was probably one of my top 5 WoW experiences, because I've put so much work into it, you know, and it felt good. Just like anything in WoW, you put a bunch of work into something and it works and you feel great.
It's a really big achievement for the... Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Zoomer.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's a really big achievement for the rogue tanking community. The fact that you off-tank Trash, it's basically out of the picture pretty much, but the fact you did it is really awesome.
I was going to ask, do you see a situation where maybe we should, like, how to put it, like, act before the storm in a way? Because if this gets out that you can have a rogue off tank in the final raid of the game, maybe the devs will get a panic attack and they immediately just shut it down. They remove Flourish, they remove Dodge from the game. They just have a panic attack. They may even delete rogues from the game. So would it be better to, like, have a chat with the devs and tell them, hey, this is cool, but maybe we could, like, make this into not as broken and also work for spells kind of thing?
You know, I actually I'm glad you brought that up, because in the really early days, when Guru, again, the pioneer, first tanked the Patchwork, you know, I was congratulating him. We had done all this work because back then world buffs were still a thing, and you needed world buffs to make it happen. But we were talking about it, and he's like, yeah, I don't want to tell the devs. And I'm like, dude, the devs know. Like, they can look at the logs.
They know.
They can see it's happening. And I'm like, the best thing to do is let's talk about it in a general chat channel on the TWoW Discord. And you know what? The happy ending there was that one of the devs was in the Rogue Discord channel and was chatting with us. We invited him to the Rogue Tank Discord channel, and we got to ask him some questions like, how did the threat poison work? And like, you know, what do you guys feel about this? Are you mad at us? Like, and we got assurances that like they knew that this could happen, and this was okay. Like they weren't going to ban us, because from a very strict reading of the rules, the terms of service, anytime you do something that is utilizing the mechanics of the game to sort of cheese things, there can be a very strict reading that would say that's breaking the rules. So I had much more of an opinion like, let's be open about it, let's be upfront, and you know, I'm sure the devs aren't completely in the dark about it, and they weren't, and they were very the one that we have in our Discord still, we can still ping and ask questions to about some of the more technical aspects. But more to your point though, Tawney, I think for the I'm what you would call sort of a rogue tank believer. So like I am happy that we have an opportunity to do tanking like this. But what I would love is a more robust toolkit for rogue tanking. I think being a void capped is great, but we don't really have a talent tree that supports it well. We don't have any threat increasing talents, and
Oh yeah.
Flourish is really strong. And I think if they really want to make that into a tanking finisher, I think something that would be more like damage mitigation would be much more beneficial, because as it stands, rogues can't really tank anything that does a bunch of spell damage, and not for lack of trying, but because it's like we have no way to mitigate spell damage. We can't dodge it. The best you can get is that improved feint talent, I think, that will lower your chance of getting crit by spells. It's like that's the best we got. So I think there's room for improvement. I think there's I would personally like things not to be like we never get hit, because I think that's not as engaging. But I'm glad that we have the opportunity. The devs know, and I support a more active change where like we get to be more like real tanks. I don't think there's any world that we could ever overtake warriors as the best tank,
Oh
but
yeah.
giving us something that's more like a toolkit closer to like either bears or paladins, you know, give us some real threat, give us some real mitigation, and then see where that puts us, because never getting hit just it's cool, don't get me wrong, but I think it limits what a rogue tank can be. I mean, even in the lore, you know, like
Mhm.
flourishing, dancing around, you know, maybe you seldom get hit, but when you do, like you just kind of shrug it off, you know, because like you're dancing around them because you're super agile. Like I can see a world where that works, and it's lore friendly, and you know, I don't think it's the top of the devs priority, but it's something that I personally support. I know there's a lot of different feelings on the server community about whether rogues should even be able to do this, you know, let alone the changes that I personally would want. So, you know, that's sort of my feeling about it.
I
You
think it
know, you
is.
talking about this, it just reminded me of Brewmaster monks so much, and it made me miss playing on Mist of Pandaria as a Brewmaster. You like had different ways of like shuffling damage. Like the way they took it is that they just take damage, and instead of taking the full hit, a percentage of the damage is dealt over time. It was
You are definitely like the third or fourth person who's brought up this monk thing. I think I should probably say my quote unquote MMO resume is that I started way back in original TBC. I played through a little bit of Wrath. I stopped for a long time. The next MMO I played was SWTOR, the Star Wars MMO. My wife got into that. We took a break, and then we jumped back on in Classic. So there's I'm very aware of the lore of WoW, because I like a lot of the lore of WoW, but I never got to play really. I think I played around Death Knights, but you know, monks, any of that stuff. Like I'm like, oh cool, that's a thing. But yeah, I based on what I've heard, I think that would fit very well with a style of tanking for rogue.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
brewmasters kind of like work around the fact like you take damage and you drink all this stuff that like does different things. Like it's a drunken master pretty much if you like movies like that work like that way. You have like the
And it's
sensei
really
or like
funny because they also, for the longest time in retail, almost every expansion, they are struggling on bosses that do magic damage because they can't dodge and parry magic damage, which is very
Oh, that's
accurate to
still
have
the case
turtle
now.
vow rogues also can deal with magic damage.
Yeah, I mean if you're gonna dodge a bunch of physical damage, and the consequences you have to stack stamina to make up for that by you know because you might get hit by magic, then like so be it. That's fine. I think to a certain extent, um, I mean maybe more so in TBC, but like bears get around with some of their issues by like, well, we just have a bunch of gear with stamina, so it's
Yeah, just
like
a very large
yeah.
health pool as a bear.
yeah.
But there's, outside of, and I have to say, like, gearing up to do rogue tanking, for any hopefuls out there, um, try to be as friendly as possible to druids and understand that the gear that's out there that you might want, they can use tanking on everything. You can only use that tanking in like a raid sense on some things. So, like,
That's
you
very
know,
true.
be patient, wait your turn. Eventually there's only so many druids, so try to be friendly to them, and what you'll find is that you'll actually end up having more in common with them at the end of the day, because you got to share leather drops with feral druid tanks, and that's fine. I lucked out. I got the one of the BIS rogue tank pieces is the Guise of the Devourer. I got that way long ago. I just happened upon it because we were trying out AQ40. I walked in and there were no druids in the group. And everyone's like, hey, does anyone want this? And I'm like, I'm building a rogue tank set. And they're like, yeah, go for it. And I'm like, oh my God.
Have you ever considered the possibility of like tanking Oru sometime? Because I think you
Uh,
can resist like his sweep and sandblast because it's physical damage.
yep. A lot of my refrain about rogue tanking, and I'll come back to this a lot, is that we're really hobbled by our lack of threat. So even though we have threat poison, even though I'll get improved poisons for more proc chance, even though I'll wear 3 set tier 2 to get even more poison proc chances, we're still stuck with that 0.8 modifier. And if you have like a DPS warrior, even one who's a little cautious, a couple crits, an enhancement shaman with Wind Fury, they're gonna beat you like in
Yeah.
threat. It's a harsh reality. So you either have to super duper outgear them, which can work sometimes. Like I've tanked I did like a full main tank run I shared with another druid. We did all of ZG. One of the best experiences I had doing rogue tanking. But like I got away with it because a lot of the DPS were like behind me in gear. But if you're with people that are around your same gear level, they're gonna rip threat from you, and you don't have a taunt, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
that's bad. So
Yeah, because that was the argument in Nax. Because on my stream, I streamed this on like Sunday. I was gonna tech Vesuvius, and we couldn't really do it. I did like theorycraft all the stuff, and I was gonna tank with like Wind Fury and do like double Valentine's buff and all that. But I still think
At
I
the
would have
end,
run
it came
into
down
the
to the fact. At the end, it came down to the fact that we had a Shadow Priest who was, really good at the game and he knew what to do, whereas the weeks before we just had healer priests that don't really have an experience with the mind control.
yeah.
So
yeah, Vesuvius is such a real fuck you boss from way back. It's like you have this class that has this already sort of janky mechanic. Like mind control has heartbeat resists. It's tough to do. Not everyone's like an expert. Like sometimes shadow priests are really good at it if they do like battlegrounds or they mess around with it a bunch. But sometimes when you're asking healers who like maybe have never tanked to be like, we need you to control this these
yep.
guys, that if you don't control them right, you wipe the raid. Like
hmm
that's a lot of pressure. And I'll tell you right now, when I tank Raz, when I tank Patch, I've done it like at least a dozen times now. It doesn't matter. Like my heart is still pumping because I know, um, if I
One
miss a
mistake and it's
flourish,
over.
yeah, exactly, because you gotta believe Raz is gonna one shot me, and a hateful from Patchwork. There's no world I somehow live that. Like they almost double my health with their hits. So yeah, you gotta do it perfectly. So you know, although keeping up flourish isn't like super hard, it is nerve wracking because um for the most meta build for threat generation. You're really energy starved when trying to keep up flourish. So it's like one sinister strike, two. Okay, now you have 6 seconds left on flourish. You can do another sinister strike, um, and then get another one up. But if you get a couple unlucky parries and you and you might have no combo points, you'll die. So like there's like no point in time you can like relax and be like, this is easy, I got this. It's like, nope, you will be nervous the whole time.
The fact that you're hitting the boss from the front makes your hit chance so unreliable.
Oh yeah, Raz is particularly bad because like Patchwork, you can kind of because he'll turn towards you for a hateful strike, but if you get good at timing your sinister strikes to account for that, you can do a little better with your sinister strikes because that's still your main combo builder. Um, and I haven't ever done Lotheb. I will say that we know him to be possible as a rogue tank for like that really meta build. Basically, what you do is you just throw in a greater nature protection potion. Now you've negated all the nature damage. You're still going to take the shadow damage like everyone in the raid does, but Lotheb just won't hit you. And then the quote unquote advantage is now pretty much all your healers can just go balls to the walls with their DPS set. And on
Yep.
TWoW, you have respec bots, so you can kind of hot swap into something better. And I've heard some people say it's better. Some people say it doesn't make that big of a difference because you
I
do
think
lose
Lothar
time
for
waiting for people to get spore.
now that you mentioned Lothar, I really want to mention that in a casual setting, it's really nice that this like lets you skip these bosses. But something that's common in all three of these bosses that you haven't mentioned yet, and I haven't heard people mention it, is that these are healer checks. These are bosses that test and prepare your healers for the
Yeah.
last few bosses that are really hard. And I, you know, as a healer, my favorite boss in the game is Patchwork because it's where healers get to shine, where timing your casts with the attack swing of the boss and getting those big kills out, it really shows a healer's skill level. There's a
Yes.
Patchwork is where healers get to show off. It's the one boss. Like how DPS have these bosses where they get to show off, like um,
Oh, Patchwork to a certain extent.
Thaddeus. Yeah, like Thaddeus, you get the big damage buff, and all the warriors are executing for 10,000. That's the show off, the fantasy for the warrior, for the DPS on Thaddeus.
Yeah. Well,
And for healers, that's Patchwork. For priests, that's Resuvius. And on low tab, that's like all the healers showing that they can work together.
when we first started planning out, because I worked with my raid lead tank, to say like, hey, this is a thing I can do. It'll help us. We can do it. And I remember bringing up at the time, I'm like, I'm worried about like because I mentioned before I'm married to Murag. She's a priest. She's a healing priest. She loves the class. She's very nerdy about it, and I'm like I don't want to upset the healers, because like I know that yeah. Patchwork is a big flex for them because even though a lot of it is about the tanks having their ducks in a row with all their mitigation and their armor pots and all that, but it really is about like can the healers deal with hateful strike damage. And yep,
How
same
good are
thing,
healers at
Lotheb's
timing those attack
communication.
swings and all that?
And yeah, I would probably argue that probably the one that um the healers are most okay with not having to deal with is Raz because
Yeah.
it's just annoying for the priests. But yeah, in the end, who I most annoy now is because after we lost world buffs, I didn't have all the gear to make up for the avoidance loss we had, and I was still gathering some. Now I just annoy druids because I tell the
Mm.
raid leader, like, hey, can you just make sure a druid keeps up insect swarm so I get 2% extra avoidance? So so a lot of
Oh yeah.
times there's a druid just muttering under the breath, like, I gotta do this fucking stupid spell, I'll fucking patchwork, this sucks, you know. So yeah.
To be fair, they
y-
don't have to do much if you're tanking.
Yep, no, that's true. That's true. But I mean, if it's like a boomkin, you know, and they want to have fun and blow stuff up, it's like they're not gonna have so much fun if they're doing insect swarm. So
And they
you know,
have to keep up
just be
fairy
aware.
fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, yeah, that's like a whole nother armor stacking and all that stuff. That's a whole nother ball of wax. You
Yeah,
know,
Rogreg may have known me that I am very eager to call out Fairy Fire, not being up on bosses, and then we vibe at like 10%, and I just like shake my face like if I could have, gotten more damage off.
you know, it's funny too because when I started with Blackwing Guard, like, um, you know, if there's sort of a spectrum of try hard to casual, I fancy myself somewhere in the middle. Like I'm not like just like just show up, don't really care about consumes, just going to do whatever spec I want. If that's like on one side, and the other side is like I've checked the sims, like this is the best. I'm going to come fully buffed to everything. Like I'd like to think I'm somewhere in the middle. And when I first started with Blackwing Guard, you know, we had like people showing up like non-ironically, like showing up as like PvP subtlety spec for rogues. And I remember back then I whispered like my raid lead, I'm like, hey man, you know why they lived? Because they have preparation. Um are they like for real? And you know, Blackwing Guard, you know, definitely is more laid back. Um and certainly for BWL. And it was just like, you know, if they're just doing more damage than the tanks, like it's not a big deal. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we have time to get more worried about that stuff as we go into AQ40 and Nax when like the content itself forces the players to like be more try hard because it's difficult content, you know, by that metric. So you know, I try to essentially I try to match the difficulty of the content with how difficult it is. So like, you know, the thing I'm most sweaty about probably is rogue tanking because I find that fascinating. But like, you know, I'm not. You know, if I die unfortunately in some trash and Nax, I'm not gonna full consume till there's a boss. Whereas like other DPS, you'd be like, "What? You don't put all your consumes back on right away?" I'm like, "No, man, I'm probably gonna die again. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not made of gold."
I'll go off on a tangent here and say, I'm sorry for interrupting, Zoomer. Um, I am a firm believer. Like some people will consider me super try hard, but I don't. I think I am very try hard with myself. But when it comes to other people, you know, like I don't care if healers aren't using consumables. That's on them. I only care about that if they complain about going out of mana without using like potions and tea, because that's very
Yeah,
cheap.
yeah,
So like what I consider to be like my in a way like my casual elitism is that you use spells. And the way I described it is when I was like 15 years old, I was playing Mists of Pandaria, and Mists of Pandaria was an infamous expansion for every class being able to do everything. Like every class has an AoE stun, a single target stun, interrupt, charge, blink. Every class had everything. And when I was 15 years old, that overwhelmed me. I'll admit it.
yeah, yeah.
And when I was playing with a friend and he was teaching me how to PvP as a monk, um, I referred to these abilities as hidden abilities. Like I told him, "Oh, I didn't know this 5 minute cooldown was a thing I should use. I thought this was a hidden spell. Like, why would I use this?" And to me, I feel like this mindset may appear with other people. Like, for instance, the exorcism for holy paladins, I had to convince people in Tapsy to use it. it was it was a long
Damn.
battle, but eventually they did use it. And we are on the Hammer of Justice route right now, where we are stunning abominations to make sure no melee dies to phase one, because we know that our melee is super geared. They are going to go in. They are not going to respect threat. So we try to stun them because they die under a stun. and that kind of works, but sometimes it doesn't. So like these hidden
Yeah.
abilities, I feel like for resto druids and boomkins, the hidden ability is fairy fire and insect swarm. So getting them to use
You're
it
going
is
to
tricky because they have to, like put it in a position where they can constantly use it. And there's a very big difference between a boomkin that starts every single trash fight by tap targeting fairy fire and a boomkin that starts every single trash fight by tap targeting moonfire.
Yeah, I mean, I will say for my part, I did play a Boomkin in TBC, and yeah, there is a big difference, because that actually does make a difference on, you know, you have to remember that, especially in this era of WoW, um, everything that you can do to be synergistic is helpful, and if you remember that and you do your part, then like the team wins, and I think when the team wins, like that's the best feeling you can get, so like yeah, that is right. And I don't think it's sweaty to want to try to succeed. I think when people get really obsessed about performance min maxing, like I'll call it sweaty, but I say sweaty generally as sort of like I said, like on a spectrum, because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, and Tawny, I know you've seen me say this before, but like whenever people get upset or butthurt, I just tell them like, guys, it's a fucking game. Like, just
Oh
try to
yeah.
have fun. Like if you're getting upset about something, like you might not be playing a game anymore, and
Oh.
that's that's the attitude I try to bring to the game itself. Like if I'm not having fun doing something, I just won't do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Back to rogue tanking. I haven't like tanked any bosses yet, but one thing I did notice from like a min-max theory crafting perspective is like the flourish duration with improved slice and dice even that does affect flourish. The duration of flourish is just too low to keep up a consistent rotation. And so it just
Yeah,
ends up being
yeah.
very reactionary. Like you just refresh when you see it instead of like timing it based on combo points.
So a little insider knowledge I have about this, and I can't remember the name of the dev, and maybe he doesn't want me to call him out. I don't know. I don't think he's really secretly in our Discord for rogue tanking, but I asked him about that. I'm like, hey, the AQ23 set bonus seems to work for flourish, and improved slice and dice seems to help flourish. Like, what's going on? And he's just like, yeah, no, when we coded it, it just coded a slice and dice. So there you go. I think the shortened duration was sort of sort of a conciliatory thing they did to be like, boy, if it's coded just like slice and dice as far as duration, it'll be more broken than it maybe should be. So like that's as close as they came to sort of withholding a stronger flourish. And I'll be the first to say, like, flourish is, I mean, I just talked about if I'm not having fun, I don't do it. I don't really like battlegrounds, but I can only imagine how strong flourish is in battlegrounds.
Well, it can be
Well,
for
four
sure.
rogues in battlegrounds are they're in a funny spot because anytime they dodge, they get overpowered for 1/3 of their health.
Now that's a
Well,
guaranteed hit, right?
Yep.
the thing is
Interesting.
with those kinds of finishers in battlegrounds is like since you usually play with like ruthlessness in battlegrounds, like sometimes when you need to switch targets and you're out of combat, you can maybe like slice and dice, but now you could just opt for like using flourish before you like tap target.
Can you tell me something? This might dovetail nicely into what it's like as a PvP rogue, because I don't really know what it's like. But I understand we got a throw finisher that can interrupt spellcasting.
That's
Like, does it work? I gotta tell you, like, I tried doing it and I'm like, neat. Well, I don't care about this, so I never touched it again.
I don't think anyone has used that spell this month.
I don't think it interrupts. It's like it's like getting the meteor trinket from AQ4 and just using it to finish off people. It looks hilarious, but it's not really like good in any means.
the thing is, I don't think you can swap ranged weapons in combat, so you can't even like equip a throw weapon when people are running away from you. You have to have your
Oh,
bow
I
out.
thought you could. I mean, again, I really wouldn't know. I do have that. I think they added, or maybe it was in the game and I didn't know, but they do have a throwing weapon that actually has some stats on it that I think I have laying in a bank somewhere. But Blackwing Guard had like a battleground like event where like all the people on the Alliance side and the Horde side, we tried to queue up for like Arathi Basin, and we would fight each other. And it was a good time. But I remember like looking around, I'm like, I think that's supposed to do something, but I don't know if it works. But like uh yeah, the obviously if you're a rogue, I would assume in battlegrounds, like you just do what good rogues do and go deep subtlety and you stun lock people and make it so they can't do anything and kill them.
Yeah, so a
I was
comment.
just informed by a viewer that you can actually swap ranged weapons on turtles.
Oh,
So I
okay.
stand
Well,
corrected.
there you go. Yeah, good to know for the, I don't know, one more time in my life I'll ever need to do that.
Well, Deadly Throw doesn't even like interrupt spellcast or anything. It's just a range
Isn't
throw.
there a talent for that you can spec into?
No,
The tooltip says it's supposed to, right?
I don't think it. I haven't tested
The
it because it's
TBC
just.
version is supposed to.
Yeah, the TBC version is, but the talents in TWoW is just like increased range. I'm pretty sure.
The concept, as I understand it, is that like, so you like nearly kill a mage, right? And you have a bunch of combo points, and then they blink away, and then they're about to kill you with like a frostbolt while you're rooted because your sprint's out of cooldown, and then you do a deadly throw and you silence them. Like, I'm like, oh, that's a cool concept, but I don't think I've seen it work.
Well, Deadly Throw, I just checked the talents. It doesn't do anything. It's just like a throw.
Thank you.
And the
Well,
talent is just like
you know-
6 yards with 2 points. But if you go so far into combat, you won't really be like good at PvP per se, because like the meta for a rogue, it's a very common misconception because people think rogues are like these kinds of like OP DPS machines that just like one shot everybody, which is like factually untrue. If you're super undergeared, sure, but the issue you run into as a rogue for PvP especially is in battlegrounds you're gonna get rooted so many times, and if you don't play with improved sprint, you're just gonna feel so like you're just gonna be stuck. You're like
Yeah.
a warrior.
We have a really a guy who loves doing battlegrounds as a paladin, Crash Town. He's Australian. He's a great guy. I love playing around. And every now and then when we run into each other in the overworld, like, we'll challenge each other to a duel. And I have gotten the drop on him. Like I did everything I thought I was supposed to do. Again, I'm not super good at PvP, but like I got the cheap shot off. Like I built a bunch of combo points. I did a kidney shot. Like I did the prep. I vanished again, cheap shot it again. I just could not kill him. Like these fuckers wearing plate. And then
Well-
like the second he's free, he's like, oh, by the way, now you're dead. I'm like, oh cool.
So the issue with a paladin as a rogue for a 1v1 matchup is like the best way to play versus a paladin is you like an average like paladin duel, if they're holy, is like a 7-8 minute duel because you're just waiting for them to go and that takes forever, especially if they have tier 3. So the plan is you like
what
have
do you do
wound.
against a ret then?
Oh, a red you can vanish hodge, but that's like advanced stuff. There's a lot of things you can do, but I mean, if they get like, they're not gonna get berserking, so they're not gonna crit you for like 7k, but they can still crit
But
you for maybe 2.
I would agree with you that like rogues in battlegrounds aren't like some unstoppable killing. It's like, me as a more casual PvPer, right? Like just because I'm a rogue does not mean I win every matchup. Like I usually need support, and I usually need like I'm essentially good at sneaking around and surprising someone who thinks they have like the numbers matchup in their favor, or like maybe grabbing something in Arathi Basin when people are snoozing. Like that seems to be the bread and butter of what I've experienced.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like the way you play rogues, like the very best rogues you've seen from like other servers and stuff, what they tend to do is they're basically like a peeling support. For example, in Warsong Gold, you like either defend flag room and just hold down the EFC until your whole team arrives, or you just help your own flag carrier escape through mid by peeling like 4 or 5 people. That's what they're best at.
You need to put in consideration the server is very old. A lot of the PvPers on the server have like either BIS or like very close to BIS, or just in general just very good gear. And then there are some people that are, they're new players and they just want to do battlegrounds, but they don't raid, so they don't really succeed. Like I remember I was doing some Arati Basin with a few guildies, and I saw three warriors with Mom, Might of Manateel, on the Horde team, and they still lost, but it was very fun to see, you know, how geared people are, and like trying to imagine like a rogue trying to, get the full combo on someone, and the someone has 6,000 health and Might of Manateel, and they overpower them for like their entire health bar.
Well, and for people that like PvP, I will say this: there are other like new battlegrounds. I can't speak for how good they are, but I will say this: they're not figured out, except for Blood Ring, which is just arena 2v2s. I'm sure that's figured out to some extent. But like, there's Sunny Glade Valley. I mean, I've tried doing Blood Ring. I've bumped into the same thing you're talking about, Tawney, where I'm like, oh, Blood Ring. There's like an exalted item you can get that rogue tanks want because it has
Hmm.
2 dodge on it, right? I'll never get it, but I queue every now and then, and I'll team up with some other guy who like knows what they're doing. I'm just like, I'm drooling out of the side of my mouth. I'm like, I know how to stab things, and then we're teamed up against like some guy who's like Grand Marshal and another guy who's like in tier 3, and I'm like, we're gonna die, aren't we? And the other guy's like, yep. It's tough out there, but part of the fun, I would say, if there is fun to be had in PvP, is like, just taking your losses in stride and like just, making friends and, enjoying the experiences you do have.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously always gonna be like toxic people for PvP, especially because it's a competitive playstyle. But I just go
Yeah.
in with the same kind of thing. Like if I'm playing versus a horde pre-made, I don't like start getting tilted or like, mad. I just like try my best or just try having fun because now it feels like there's some kind of quality PvP.
Yeah.
The pre-mates are a very interesting topic. I was recently asked by a guild member of both Tepsi and Blackwing Guard, Pepe or Papa John CEO, to play PvP with him, and he invited me to his PvP private server, private Discord server, and like we queued up, we had a blast, but we could get like 4, 5 games at max before like the horde just stopped queuing for battlegrounds,
Yeah.
and it's fun, don't get me wrong, it's really fun to play pre-made battlegrounds. One of the like more fun experience in retail is doing like a 10 versus 10 pre-made battleground, and it's really rewarding too, so people have
Yeah.
a reason to do it. But on
I,
Turtle, the only reason to do it is, you just crush the opposing team. That's
I,
it.
I would say that uh, my best experiences in battlegrounds as someone who isn't that interested in them has been when it is clearly that both sides are not pre-mades, and I can imagine it would be fun if both sides are pre-mades as well, because then you have sort of a parity of communication, so to say, and like then the competition is more like on equal footing. Even if the gear's off, there's still class imbalances. I'm sure that all sorts of stuff you can go into there, but like when you have like a good close Arathi Basin that like goes down to the wire, like like chef's kiss, like that's like peak PvP content in my opinion, right? And like uh you know there's no way to keep replicating that, because you queue again and it's like, oh, about to get stomped, like then it's
Uh,
not as fun. But that's my 2 cents
I
on it anyway.
I've always had the most fun on Turtle Battlegrounds when I was queuing with friends or like people who I could be on Discord
Oh
with
yeah.
at the same time, and just like, play for a big, like it's like other games have this, like you play for a highlight, like as a warrior especially or a mage, you can play for a highlight so well, where like you pop all your cooldowns, your trinkets, and just like go and just AoE down people, and it's very fun. It's like superb, it's thrilling. Your heart is racing all the time. But yeah, Turtle PvP. I guess we just transition to the rogue PvP talk at this point. Might as well. Turtle PvP is to say it gently, is not as good as the PvE.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it is technically a PVE RP server. Like
That's
Yeah.
very true.
it's like, and that being said, I still think things can be done to make it more enjoyable for the people that want to participate in PvP. But I mean, you guys were around when we had like a big glut of people that all came here for PvP, and like, they were not happy with how the rules were.
Yeah, there's some common misconceptions about PvP. Like I've seen a few people complain. So there's like these jumps you can do worse on goals, for example, and people think that's exploiting. Like
It is
I've had a few people
definitely the
report me for that.
skill floor being really high for people, who like don't really aren't really accustomed to PvP, and for them to see someone just climb up, it's it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, the PvP was never like super competitive here, and I think that's why a lot of other PvPers might have quit. I know a few people who quit because they only came for the PvP, and they've played on servers like Henhouse, and Henhouse was like this private invite only private server for like just pure pre-mating and like tryharding. But I still like, even like me being a really competitive PvPer, I can still enjoy playing TWoW PvP at times. It's like I don't try to aim for these like sweaty plays or games. I just try to like have fun. If I'm like, I don't want to farm gold here right now, I'll just like queue for a few games.
So I know it's a bit controversial, but I figured, as we're talking about rogues, and rogues can definitely be a big part of this problem if you think it's a problem. But how do you feel about higher level tunes going to low level areas and griefing players? Obviously rogues are a big part of that equation, because it's really great to sneak in and then just kill low level players.
I'll let you go first because I have a longer part in this, so I'll let you guys say your first.
Well, I think the main issue is the way the war mode glyph is designed. It's tailored to people who just want to level casual and play casually, but it also rewards other people who are more into like world PvP, and so it just kind of clashes. And it sparked a lot of drama before. It'll keep doing that, I think.
Yeah, I have in the past, when I leveled up my mage, there weren't as many PvPers on the server yet, so I think I dodged the worst of it. But I do remember I never got griefed, I never got camped, so I really lucked out in that regard. But if you take a PvP glyph for a PvE reason, generally my point of view on that is that, like, you've made that choice, and
Yeah.
it sucks, but like, you don't get the good part without having to deal with the bad part. That being said, though, like, I cannot understand, like, I cannot get in the mind of a person who like just likes camping low level areas and killing people. Like, I don't know. I just can't understand it. I'm sure it's fun for someone, and I'm generally not the kind of person that's gonna tell people what's enjoyable and what's not. Like, that's completely up to them. But I just don't understand it. Like why?
I think
I
it's
want to. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, but I think it's just based on like what other people strive from. Like those kind of people like strive from other people reacting to them, and then they in return like feel powerful about it. Like there was this guy named what was he called? Redridge Boss. He was like
Redridge Boss.
he was the first ever like true ganker. He was like a hunter just running
yes.
around with his pet in Westfall named like
Princess or something, right? So that, like, it was the same name as like an NPC pig that you needed to like do something with. So
Yep.
like low level players would target it thinking like, oh, like, I can attack this must be the enemy, and then they would flag and they're like, what's going on? And then it was over.
Yep. There used to be a guy named Edward as well. He's a really old one. He actually got banned twice, I think. But what he used to do, so like the ranking system, like there's a kind of rework to the honor system in TWoW, and so that you can go below rank 0, so you can go like into dishonored ranks. And
You can
Edward
be
was
a bandit, right?
yeah, and so he was farming those by killing civilians, of course, and just farming like the dishonorable kills. Yeah, and infernal stuff with gold shard. There used to be a lot of that. Even Grimbatul got banned for that.
With Grimbattle, he was who I wanted to bring up here because for me, when I started Turtle, like restarted, let's say, my mage was like level 50 at the time or something. I had a real life friend come into TWoW, and he wanted to do hardcore with my warrior, my first hardcore warrior, but he was a bit behind. So I wanted to boost him so he would catch up in XP. And he would just mob tag in Elvin, and I would just kill them. And he saw a player running by, and he buffed them, but that player happened to be PvP tagged. And this level 40 shaman just happened to be on the road in Elvin, and he immediately killed him. And my friend was so sad that he lost his character after just buffing someone that he was just done. He just quit the game. And
Yeah.
for like a year I resented gankers, and actually it may have been that he had Vormod. I don't remember. Maybe he had Vormod. Anyway, so basically he got killed, he deleted the game, never played it again. And after that I met Grimbatul, and Grimbatul is very famous for, ganking low level players in Goldshire and Westfall, and even raiding Stormwind with like a group of people at times. And I spoke to Grimbatul and I told him that I think what he's doing is bullying. And we had a chat about this, and he told me that in his point of view, him killing someone just makes them run from the graveyard to where they were before. And to him, if he dies and he has to run back to his character, that's not a punishment to him. So he doesn't consider it to be a negative thing for others, in a way. And it just made me reconsider like what other people's definition of like bad things are in life,
Yeah, I also want to add too, because one part of this PvP discussion that I think should be added is that honestly, some of the best RP guilds we have on the server are RP focused ones, and of course, I'm talking about Blacktooth Grin. Um, they, they one of their rules is like you don't camp. Like obviously, we're gonna kill people in open world combat, like that's part of their thing, but like they're role playing as like a bunch of like still loyal to Rend Blackhand trolls and orcs, and they'll run around and they will like make events saying like we're gonna raid Stormwind, and like they're RPing the whole time, and like even when you catch them when they're not like during an event, one of these it's a classic story that one of our old GMs used to tell. Kalea, she said she was going through the Swamp of Sorrows, right? And there's like a little questing hub there now for Alliance, so it's not completely ass backwards to go there as that faction. And she was wandering through, and this troll walked up to her in Blacktooth Grin and said, "Hey, we're collecting donations for orphans of the war. Would you like to donate?" And she gave the guy like 5 silver and said like, "Oh, thank you so much. Now I'm going to take the rest of your gold," and then just murdered her on the spot. Like they RP as like villains, which I will say is like in a different world than like grieving someone. Like like they have a reputation. They'll yell about "get out of our swamp, Alliance." Like I think that's like on a different level too, and I think it's engaging. Like the best PvP I've seen is like when people are RPing it. Like I love that stuff.
I remember faintly, like back when I used to play like a year ago, because I took a year's break. But we used to like do like this kind of like PvP war out in the open world versus Blacktooth Grin. So it was like me and 4 other people from Tapsy, and we just like battle it out. It was super fun.
Oh yeah, those guys are great. If you're Alliance and you run into them, you should run the other way. If you're Horde and you run into them, just keep nodding and agreeing with whatever insane stuff they say that you can barely read because they speak in like pig English. It's really hard to understand.
Amazing.
I think the most recent like kind of PvP war I had was like I was randomly in Goldshire and I saw like these horde characters like trying to grief the Goldshire players, and so I just respected like I killed them for like 20 minutes straight just because they kept trying to kill me. And then a few seconds or like a few minutes pass by after that, and their alliance like members show up, and I'm thinking like, okay, they're gonna heal their own horde players and they're gonna escape or something. But no, they started helping me kill them, and it just turned into like this 5v5 guild war, and I was just part of it. It was super weird.
Yeah, there is something to be said for emergent gameplay that comes out of PvP. Someone starts ganking lobies, they call for high level players to come by. They come by, and before you know it, like Duskwood now becomes like a war zone. Like that's fun, and it started from something that I generally think is kind of like shitty to do, which is, of course, being that guy and ganking lobies and camping them. But like it can turn into something good. So, I'm never going to be of the opinion that it should never happen. I think it has its place, but I just don't understand the people who will just do it just to do it. And I can see with what Tawny's saying how, like, there's a, I'm not camping them. I'm just forcing them back to the graveyard. There's lots of different perspectives on it, and so like I'm pretty accepting of that. So, I'm glad that there's a lot of nuance to the PvP discussion.
Yeah. Well, I
You
think
know,
for
this is a whole different can of worms, but I'll just mention it. I think the server would be really different if the server had like mandatory PvP zones. But of course, you would just bypass that by grouping. But mandatory PvP zones, and especially this would help the world boss situation of the server. As it is right now, it's a sort of monopoly, and it's really good for the people who are in it, but it's bad for the new people and the people who are not in it.
yeah.
Yeah, world bosses is always a complex discussion. The more they give them really, really good gear, you're always going to attract people that want them. And when higher geared people denied them for whatever reason, either because of better organization or, whatever it is, that can be negative for the newer player. But, just like with the PvP discussion, there's also another side of it, which is that, like, this is rewarding players who do organize, and it also adds a layer of mystique to those people who are like, yeah, man, they're crazy, like they always get that guy on spawn, like it's like,
Oh yeah.
and so like, yeah, it sucks, but it can be good. It's like a lot of things in the game itself. I would even suggest anyone who's listening to this or watching, I would encourage those people to go and check out. Torta linked a podcast that designer Dave did with two of the WoW devs, and he talked about some of the internal discussions they had when first creating WoW about how PvP should be, if PvP should be, and I think that can even give you some good perspective because a lot of this is like a rush design job that we now revere because that's how it was. So one of the great things about Turtle WoW is that we can take those things sometimes and sort of flip them on their head and look at them in different ways. So that even something like that can give you some different perspective.
Yep. It's I personally am a huge advocate for the way Mists of Pandaria and like future expansions handle the world boss loot, where anyone can go, you can make a group, you don't have to be in the group, it's okay. As long as you hit the boss and you don't die, when you loot it, you either loot gold or you get an epic that's just like for you. Like it's not a group loot, it's a personal item, like a quest item. Like you get to pick it up, others may not. And it's completely random, it's 100% random. Yes, it would make it more tedious. Yes, it would make it, harder to manage, but you wouldn't run into a situation where people, are toxic about it, or like people grief others by like pulling threat on a world boss until it resets so their group can get the next egg. It would just in general, it would maybe make people be more unhappy with the items they get and the chance of getting a good item from a world boss, but it would probably, eliminate a lot of current issues.
Yeah, because I was gonna say the current like World Boss Coalition, it's like a private group and it's invite only. You can only get in if like you're in one of these certain guilds. For example, me, I wouldn't be allowed in on Rogue if I wanted to join in for loot. It's like just because I'm in this guild, they're not gonna let me in. It's like very very private.
But I do understand, why they made it, and I do understand there are past actions of people. There's a reason why Tepsi is not allowed. There's a reason why the Russian guilds are not allowed. But it's when you look at this and you consider, hey, a lot of those people that caused trouble in the past, they may not even be playing anymore. They may not even care anymore. You're punishing a new generation of players who just happen to join that guild.
Yeah, so like the
Yeah,
new people say they like a new guy joins Tapsy and he needs these world bosses and just gets told no, you cannot
Or
join
not
because you're
even
not in our
needs. You would
guild.
just like to see what it's like. It's like
Yeah,
Yeah, like I'll disclose that I'm in the World Boss Coalition. There's nothing I super duper want except for a cloak off the spider boss in Eastern Plaguelands. But you know, um, I I'm not super duper sweaty about it. Like I'm not parking alts to check respawn times or anything. If I see a ping, I'll go do it. It's not even if I need the boss or not. Because like you said, they're just fun. Like I think the more you can allow people to participate is good. But then you're looking at like, well, then you might be pushing up spawn timers, and then if you do that, then you have to rebalance how much gear comes out of them and things like that. So it's like it's a difficult balance to strike, because if you do have a group monopolizing it, then it's tough, and the guy in the coalition said like, oh man, it's tough. It's like, well, it is, because I recognize that people should be able to like try out some of these cool things, because there are new world bosses. There's one in front of Karazhan, there's one in Eastern Plaguelands, there's the one in Tenaris, and people at least want to check it out, and I think that's fair, and people should have a chance, but not at the cost of it becoming a big PvP slugfest where everyone's being toxic and killing each other during the kill. Like that's not useful either. So it's like there's not really a good answer to it.
Yeah, I mean, I personally like there are a couple solutions. I'm not a dev, so I won't say any of these are better than what we have, but like if I wanted to approach world bosses, I would maybe consider, making world bosses drop vanity items. I really enjoy the Christmas Zone world boss, Frost what's his name?
Snowball?
Frost something.
It's called
Oh,
Snowball,
don't
yeah.
even get fucking.
Snowball,
Do you
Snowball.
remember
Yeah.
what? Do you remember what
Like
Lexi
he
did
drops
to me?
PoEs.
Oh,
Come again?
like I, Lexi trolled me so bad one time during Christmas because she went into World Chat and said, "Hey, whisper Vrograg for Snowball invite."
Oh no.
Oh
I
no.
I couldn't see my chat for like half an hour. People still believe. I was like, Lexi, you son of a bitch, I'm gonna get you for that. Sorry, go on with your
See,
story about Snowball.
yeah, see, Snowball is a good world boss because all the items he drops are items you can buy from the auction house. So winning an item from him feels like you won 500 gold. It's a good feeling. Whereas the spider, you kill it, and then one person may be really happy, but it could be that 40 people are disappointed because he dropped a paladin tanking item.
Yeah, and to add a little bit to that specifically, there's been a lot of work done. I think we can all agree to help make less viable specs more viable on the server. And
Hmm.
some of that has been done through gear added to world bosses. Like
Yes.
some of the really good druid tanking stuff's on them. Some, like, I think there's good stuff for elementals, there's good stuff for like smite priest, right? And it's like, boy, like let's say you really want to do smite priest and you're like, well shit, like I got to try to get into the world boss coalition if I really want to try at this. It's like that part is probably something that I would caution against the devs. Like
Hmm.
put it into content that everyone can participate in. Like I understand putting a couple bistings here and there, like that's fine, but like the stuff that helps the underserved classes through gear, I would caution against putting those on world bosses.
I think another issue with the spider boss in particular is like some of the loot he gets. You have to like think about this boss was designed around like BWL AQ kind of gear, but some of the items are so good you'll realistically or never gonna replace them. So for example, Shadow Weaver's cape for rogues and warriors and hunters. The only thing you'd want to replace it with is a cloak from Nags, and even then the difference between the two is like almost zero. And same goes for the tanking
Yep.
cloak for bear tanks. I think that's like the biz, and
Or
it's the
rogue
same for,
tanks.
or
How
also
dare
rogue
you?
tanks.
I know that Dragunovi said that he's considering removing some of the Dark River items and putting it on the Karazhan raid bosses, and I think it's a really, really good direction. I personally feel like the Nerubian Overseer should have been like a one boss raid. Like maybe you get exalted with Argent Dawn, and then a quest opens up that lets you raid the Crypt Fiends like god or mother or overbrewed mother thingy. I don't know.
Well, there's already
And
the
Yeah.
attunement
that's the
quests,
overseer.
so like even that as like a bar for entry could be, good enough for that.
It will fix
I think
the.
the server is lacking 1 raid bosses, and I know Emerald Dream is going to be a 2 raid boss, but
I mean, making the
there will be
Ruby
an
and
overseer.
Overseer raid
Thank you.
instance would fix like the biggest coalition problem because it's like the main boss you think about when you like think about the World Boss Coalition, and the kind of gear you get from the raid also makes sense for a raid because of how good some of the items are.
I can't really think of many. Like, I can think of Shadow Priests wanting the Kazakh pants. That's like the other thing that's like a bit
Oh yeah,
tedious. Or the Druids wanting the Dark Reaver. What do Druids use? Relics.
or the shapeshifting one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or the
Isn't there
Druid.
also a totem relic that helps enhancement shamans make their totems better? I don't remember who
yeah,
that's off of.
yeah.
But
I think
that's
that's from the Karazhan guy too. I think it was like 8 strength to
Yeah.
strength of air or something.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. Like speaking of rogue tanks, a lot of times when you do rogue tanking, you depend on your friendly either twisting enhancement shaman or just a shaman who can drop the good agility totem because it's like something ridiculous. It's like what is it, 77 or like 85 agility if they spec
It's
into it. And, like,
77 and then like 83.
yeah, and if you can add to that with a totem equipable, like that's huge. So like I would love to see more enhancement shamans get it because Blackwing Guard has a few of those because we're not as strict about Mimi specs. So and to be fair, they're a lot better on Turtle WoW I believe than on Classic.
Yeah. Well, also for the items they've added for sure. I think looking forward for like class changes, I think to make rogue tanking like even better would be like cutting off some of like the gear requirement and consumable requirements you need because if you don't pop consumables or don't have the gear, you just can't really tank in raids. And again, it's also like it's single target tanking spec because you have no like AoE. If you use all of Immolation or Blade Flurry, you can keep threat for like 10-15 seconds and then those ads are gonna fall off.
Should we go to the what spells future expansions added and what we could use in Turtle WoW to make rogues feel more finished as a class section?
Yeah, I will say as a disclaimer, this is my first rogue tune I've ever played. So a lot of times my knowledge base is going to be pretty limited on this stuff, but I can definitely give my takes on what the ability does.
I think that's really good because I'll just Zoomer will show the spells that I sent him. I'll explain how they worked, and then you can react as someone who hasn't seen it before to give a genuine reaction to the spell.
I actually only added a few of them, those that will make sense for the server. I think that's 4. But yeah, the first one I had was Fan of Knives, which with combat would probably be OP unless you like tune it down. But
yeah, holy
rogues
shit, that's nice.
Rogues do kind of need some sort of like on-demand cleave because the issue is with combat being so good, if you spec into other specs, you won't have Blade Flurry or you're just do like too low damage.
So I think that to make rogues better, yes, they need an on-demand cleave. I wouldn't disagree with that. But what I would say is, I am a believer in like, class, sort of some classes doing things better than others, and not every class needs something that other classes have. So like, rogues are great at single target stuns and single target DPS. One of their weaknesses is lack of AoE. This would be a complete game changer. Like, obviously, like even if it was nerfed, like, I mean, I've been in raids and like, well, Blade Flurry is gone. I guess I'll just hit one guy, and it doesn't feel good. And I say that as someone who played Mage for a long time. I cannot tell you how badly I've missed seeing a bunch of numbers.
Yeah.
Also consider that the numbers on this spell are for Wrath of the Lich King, I believe, so it would be a very different number for Turtle WoW, whether it's the energy cost, whether it having a damage percent, or the, because obviously this looks like it would be really good for swords, but would be lackluster for daggers,
I'm
and
in,
It's
swords
so
is
so
already
there's no
meta.
cooldown on this.
In retail, no, but it costs half your energy, so you
the
use it
issue.
twice and then you have to wait.
The issue with Fan of Knives is you would do way more DPS than a warrior would if you even if you tuned it down. I feel like, and AOE
They
doesn't
could
sit right with the like class image, if that makes sense
I,
either.
I like I would be down with something like this if it had something like granted then it would just make it like another blade flurry situation, but what I would say is that if they made it something like a druid's hurricane or a hunter's what is it, volley, where
Yeah.
like you have an AoE that can hit more than, two or three things, like, oh, like, look, you have it, it's on a cooldown, you're not going to be as good as the warlocks, you're not going to be as good as the
Hmm.
mages, obviously, but hey, like, here's something for your toolkit that you can participate in, like, AoE fights. Like, if that was how it was, I would be much more down with it, because it feels bad when, like, there's like 16 plus mobs that everyone has to AoE, and you're just like, hey, I'm here too. Hopefully I have a grenade, like that's all
Yeah,
you can
I
do.
think maybe either a target limit on Fan of Knives being like 5, or maybe, a cooldown on it would be nice. Because as it is, I feel like rogues are probably the most forced into engineering next to warriors. And I feel like that's also not something that's like healthy for the game. That you have to be an engineer for if you're a rogue and you're raiding.
Yeah.
You need to contribute on these big AOE pools like the
And
spiders
if you
in.
mess around with rogue tanking, you have to have engineering too. Just like any non-traditional tank, you need engineering, because most of the non-tank classes, like, they don't have AoE. Like, not in
Yep.
that way. Unless you're warlock. Warlocks have AoE, but that's a different can of worms.
Yeah, so I definitely feel like Fan of Knives in some setting with like correct, balancing would definitely find its place on Turtle. I know that Turtle likes to add spells at max level to not mess with like brackets and PvP brackets and whatnot. But I've desperate when leveling my rogue in dungeons. I felt extremely useless outside every boss encounter because I would just pull threat with backstab, and I wouldn't make the tank happy. And on big AOE packs with 4 or 5 mobs. For the first 40 levels, I could do nothing. Not
Well,
until
well,
I
they
had Blade
added
Flurry.
they added flourish at like level 30 or 40, I think, though.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
Am
that
I
40.
crazy?
that
Yeah.
one's unique. That one's unique. But like Voter Shield is like something at level
Yeah.
60.
Yeah.
So I think for Fan of Knives, if you wanted to realistically add it to the game, there should first of all be a cooldown on it, and it should cost more energy, and it should be channeled. I think that would be like,
Channel. Oh, that would
yeah,
be.
Oh, channeling, nice.
There's a spell like that in retail in some expansion. It's called Shuriken Storm because for sub they made sub like a ninja spec in retail, and Fan of Knives becomes Shuriken Toss, which is like you do an AOE. It's the same thing basically, but yeah,
oh,
sub
okay.
has a spell that like it channels Fan of Knives for a couple seconds, and you just keep using it until you run out of energy or something.
I think
Although
it
I,
different.
I, I do want to say, though, if you're channeling, you can't dodge. So as a rogue tank, I'm against that particular part.
Hmm.
Well, you could add a talent and make it so it's not channeled. For say you rework subtlety into like putting tank talents in there or combat. But I think if you don't make it channeled unless talented or channeled at all, it's just gonna be super OP because now you can DPS while AoEing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Go over to the next one. Next one is Mutilate, which is actually in the database, as far as I know.
Waiting for the stream to catch up.
Okay. So it's a combo point builder, looks like.
But it's actually the
Bunch
wrong
of math in
tooltip.
there.
The thing it does is basically you attack with both of your weapons, and it also like I think it does more. Yeah, it does more damage if you have poison on the target.
Oh, okay. I don't. I mean, if it's not a combo point builder, what would it be, a finisher?
It is a finisher, yeah. Wait,
Okay.
Wait,
is it?
Like,
Mutilate is you're confusing it with Envenom. This is
Yeah,
Mutilate.
I'm confusing.
This is basically backstab for sword, and it generates 2 combo points.
I, I mean, again, for my limited rogue knowledge, I mean, what I will say is, I would assume there's a cooldown on this because anything that gives you 2 combo points is a big deal. Like cheap shot, like that's amazing. You can even spec into it to get more. So like
Yeah,
50 energy, yeah, that's pretty good. Because what
uh,
Sinister Strike spec is 40.
The
well,
downside is that this spell would come at the end of assassination, so you wouldn't have adrenaline rush and blade flurry if you
Oh,
went for
okay.
this.
That's all
Before
right.
I
So
forgot to
yeah,
include that, but that's
yeah,
very
because this is
important
the
for.
retail tooltip. This isn't from TBC.
So yeah,
Uh,
this you would get
yeah.
a version of this spell after or instead of Vigor, which currently gives 10 energy, which I don't believe any rogue on the server has ever taken, even by accident. Some
I
people
have
go
Did
seen
for
it on
one.
Seal of
I have
purpose.
seen
Fate,
Just
one.
I did it just to say I did.
but
Yeah. Well,
I know
So I
Seal of
think
Fate build is a thing, but I know rogues also go for Blade Flurry instead of Vigor, because they can just kind of get enough points for both, but not Vigor and Blade Flurry, obviously.
But with mutilates, yeah, it does require daggers, which makes sense for the assassination spec. But if you add this and shiv and surprise attacks, suddenly assassination becomes like a really fun spec to play because now you shiv to proc your poisons and you wait for the mutilate cooldown. You use mutilate to consume those. Wait, that's envenom again. But you still do more damage as they're poisoned than you can envenom. So you like you
Well,
use backstabs, you use maybe Garrod if they kind of balance that out, and use shiv and envenom.
we should probably also bring up the fact that debuff cap has been pushed up such that when you're doing like raid encounters, before you could never use deadly poison because it would take up a debuff slot. Now, because there's so many debuff slots, you can use deadly poison. So,
Hmm.
there's already sort of flux in the poison world. I mean, poison is that unique thing at this version of the game that only rogues can do. And it's sort of like our own little thing that like we really know about,
Yeah.
like in addition to pickpocketing loot tables. So it's like, you have that. And I would love to see more poisons do varied and different things. Like I think they could still add more to it, but yeah, like I think more loves could be given to poison. And, I know you're talking about Envenom, but Assassination Tree, outside of like some of its utility stuff, I would love to have more of a reason to go down that tree.
I've actually made a forum
I don't
post
know if
on
you
this.
have. Do you have Surge of Toxins included in the slideshow? Because I think that would fit very well into Turtle WoW.
I do not. Wait, I think I do. But I want to say I made a forum post, like just generally putting out suggestions for how I imagine trees should like work around. And I made a point that assassination rook could be this sort of like supportive spec where you could get like weak points and say when you use a finisher, the boss takes maybe 10% more damage for 5 seconds and stuff like that, and you have poisons that reduces resistances and all that.
That's actually a really good point because what I can definitely bring to the table this discussion, I know way more about mage stuff, right? And I remember very distinctly, like if you want to do PvP, you go Frost. If you want to do, outside of MC and BWL, if you want to do PvE, you got stuff in Fire. And then all of your accessory and support stuff is in Arcane. And then with the class changes, they gave Arcane an even more rich suite of support with Arcane Brilliance Aura, and they had some other stuff in there. So it's like that would dovetail very nicely because, like, as a rogue, outside of the bullshit that I do, you're a DPS class. You're built to do DPS. And so, like, having one of your talent trees have a more rich suite of support talents would be great. I think that's ideal. And they've already done it with Arcane Mages.
Yeah,
I do wish Arcane Mage was a bit better tuned though, because like from all the people who did the math, and trust me, on the Turtle WoW Mage channel, we did the math many times. It's like half as effective as the Mage Blood Potion, and the Mage Blood Potion is already something that like most casters don't bother using or getting because it's
Well,
just not that big. So
I
like,
mean, yeah, like I think that's fair. What I will say is that I actually appreciate them adding stuff that's really bad because it's easier to tune up something that's bad than add something that's broken and not be able to fix it.
yeah. So Vera actually made a good point. Speaking of poisons earlier, in the fact that Wind Fury, it doesn't stack on top of poisons, and I think that could definitely be a point to like make it so it stacks in the future.
Hmm.
Oh,
And
fun
again,
fact about poisons and weapon enhancements. I just learned this last night on my shaman. If you put a mana oil on your weapon and then you use your own personal Wind Fury, it removes your mana oil. I didn't know that. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's like replacing weapon buffs. Yeah.
I like because I had my totem out. I'm like, oh, okay, Wind Fury's not on. I'm fine. And I just clicked my Wind Fury thing out of like habit because it was like a boring fight. I had nothing to heal. I'm like, oh, click Wind Fury. I'll go in there, and I'm like, where'd my mana oil go? Oh, son of a bitch.
Oh man.
Zoomer, how about we go over all the pictures, or like some of the pictures that you think are worth mentioning, and then we finish it with your turtle web post on the forums?
Yeah, so we have Cloak of Shadows here too, which could work for rogue tanking, I feel like. So the tooltip says it provides a
This
moment
would
of magic
definitely be
immunity.
something that would require a bit of, balancing, especially for
Yeah.
PvP. This is a big PvP. This is essentially a PvP trinket and a divine shield for spells
Well, you
only.
could just make it so it doesn't work in PvP. Curse of Doom works that way. It doesn't work against other players.
I mean, you could even make it so that it isn't an immunity. It's like a damage mitigation effect, right? So it's like you take 10, 20, 30% less damage from magic. You could make it
Mhm.
such that it's something like that. So then it is more of a tank thing, but it would also work for PvP, for instance.
Yeah, this thing should definitely be something that somehow doesn't work in PvP. Because in PvP, this thing would require a complete overhaul of every class. So
This
It could
goes
I
work.
would,
back to
It could
yeah,
kind of
like
work
that.
like Vrograg said. And if you then just make it like a deep subtlety talent, it's like you forego some DPS just to go further into subtlety and you pick out like
like,
more.
maybe put it next to prep or something like that.
It should be below prep, I feel like, because I wouldn't even take prep if I could pick this, you know?
I just wish they would put the whole rogue talent tree and put it in a blender and just see where stuff is, because that would probably be better from a tank point of view. It's fucking weird.
I do believe that rogues suffer right now from being the squishiest melee class in raids, and because of that, they are often required to use a flask in AQ40 and Next Ramus just to stay alive. Whereas the warriors can also be really squishy. They always have the option to swap out of berserker stance into defensive stance, gaining
Yeah.
And
actually
they
getting
have
20% defensives because they lose the 10% reduction and they gain 10% increase. So rogues don't have that option, and defensive stance is of course a permanent thing. They can just stay in it forever, and rogues don't rogues, as you can see on the screen, rogues usually pick at least 2 or 3 of these, and that's just also warriors can put on a shield. Thank you, Puppet.
I mean, I will say that when I first started progging Nax, like I knew I was going to be doing rogue tanking, so I had Flask of Titans and all the health stuff to help the DPS, not like be the health target for hateful strikes, but I didn't want to pop it till I got to the boss, right? And I immediately realized exactly what you're saying is that like, boy, if I don't have Flask of Titans, a free action potion, the Rumsey rum for the stamina, maybe even stamina food over agi food, the Zanza, everything. Like, if I get a cleave, like, I'm probably dead. Like, there's nothing you could do about it other than hope for a dodge. Like it does suck in that regard.
Yeah, because I also have a picture. Like my rogue is practically full biz, but I have 2.2k armor. That's unbuffed by the way, but it's like 18% damage reduction compared to a warrior who maybe has like 4.5k just in their DPS gear.
And this might be controversial, but in my quest to help make rogue tanking a thing, if there is a way to give rogues some damage mitigation, make there be a talent that could give us some sort of armor buff. Some not as crazy as the bear one because I think that's unique and they should keep it, but something that would like give us some sort of armor multiplier so that when we get hit, we're not like two shot or one shot by something, because it is tough.
You're getting
Yeah.
closer and closer to Brewmaster.
Or we could get bucklers like we had in beta.
I have talked to the dev specifically about that, and I think I don't have the conversation pulled up, but it's pretty much a meme among the devs about giving rogues bucklers. I don't think it's going to happen, but it is spoken of.
You would have to
You know, I
rewrite the
think
code, yeah, because shields and
I think
buffers are the
after
same
this
thing.
conversation, I'm very happy that rogue tanks exist the way they do, and we just like considering that for some guilds, they may just not have the gear or the dedicated enough people to do certain bosses that require a certain class check. So for them, being able to somewhat get to for I think for a lot of guilds on TWoW, just making it to 4 horsemen alone is like a big thing. And the
Yes.
rogue tanking helps a lot of casual people do that, and I think that's cool. Like after this conversation, I'm convinced of that.
Speaking of 4 horsemen, I think theoretically, could you not tank like the 2 front bosses, Mograine and Thane, as a rogue?
No, because you still got to do tank swaps.
Oh right.
I mean,
I
if
mean-
you're going for the strategy where you just burn them down immediately, maybe Mograine, because there's no fire
Shield
damage
wall.
on Mograine, but like
Yeah.
shield wall just makes that one last forever. So, no, and you take so much shadow damage, like you can't dodge that. So, without taunts and without some ridiculous magic resistance or something that helps us get way more stamina, or some sort of mitigation, like no, it's sadly not an option. I would love a taunt to help my team in 4 horsemen.
Yeah, because that
Oh,
would be awesome to see.
do you have Feint, the change I made to Feint? Because Feint right now in Classic is kind of useless as a spell.
You never use Feint.
Yes.
And the way they redesigned Feint was, I feel like, a really good way of giving rogues both a survivability and Feint purpose. So, as you can see on the
Yes.
stream, it is a 15-second cooldown spell on like current WoW. It is ignore the elusiveness part; it's a talent. It is a 35 energy cost spell. You don't have to have a target for it. When you perform it, your character does like a pretty spin, so it's also a fun thing to spam while you're AFKing in a city. Perform an evasive action, reducing damage taken only from area of effect damage by 40%.
Yeah, that's not too different than like Ghostly Strike, the way it's staggered. How like you're not going to get that effect for the full, until it's up again, right? But it does give you like an extra burst of like avoidance or mitigation, and yeah, that would be great. I mean, as it is, rogue tanks, ones who aren't threat obsessed, can take the improved feint just for the spell crit and melee hit crit reduction chance, but that's about the only thing you'd be interested in.
Yeah.
I feel like this could also like affect spell damage to an extent, and then we don't have to add Cloak of Shadows to the game.
It sounds like someone's been traumatized by Cloak of Shadows, if I'm being honest.
Well, it sounds.
I played a lot of Rogue, and I know just how powerful that skill can be.
I mean, the talent
yeah.
in itself from this tooltip already looks really good because 35 energy is practically a hemorrhage or a sinister strike you're foregoing just to survive a bit or take even less damage, which I feel is
Imagine
really good.
using this bad boy before the Frost Blast goes out on Kel'Thuzad. You help the healers out a lot, or
yeah.
Well, like I don't know if we're quite on to like what rogue tanks need in the future, but what I will say is probably the best feeling way to rogue tank is like with that talent. I don't remember which one it is, but when you dodge, you have a chance to get a combo point.
Oh
and
yeah,
that can help.
Yeah.
Can help bridge the gap of like you have all these abilities you have to use, so you're energy starved, so you're not building combo points. But if you have a passive way of gaining combo points, I think that would be a great option for rogue tanking, essentially.
Yeah, so my
just
suggestion
make sure we don't add that one spell that you get the combo point every time someone crits, because that was meant for 20 men, not 40 men.
Oh damn.
Well, so setup is like in my forum post, which we're gonna like discuss later. I feel like the percentage proc chance is like really low. I feel like because 45% you put 3 points and you only have like a 45% chance. It feels a bit staggering to me. I made the same points for like ruthlessness in assassination. The talent that has like a 60% chance to give you an extra combo point when using a finisher at like 3 points.
Yeah, ruthlessness definitely feels it feels like a mistake to leave it as it is, honestly. I mean, people still take it because like that's the best option there to take for daggers and swords sometimes, but it's not something I feel like most people are happy with. and it feels really bad when you just go on for a whole fight and you never get a single proc.
It's part
I
of
mean,
the big rogue issue. I feel like you have all these talents that are like proc based, and you rely on those to like get a consistent rotation going.
well, think of like even like the talent like murder, which I think lore wise makes a lot of sense. But it's like, okay, so I take this for certain raids, but not other raids. If you're really sweaty, you can hot swap in and out during raid. If you have a humanoid, dragonoid, or giant boss, like that's fine. But it's like it's very niche. Like I can't think of any other. I mean, maybe hunters have something like that, but it's like just put something else there. Like the damage buff is nice, sure, but like why?
It's a role play aspect. I feel like that went a bit too long. I don't believe that spells or talents that are like centered towards role play should be made into a spell unless it's like a secondary text. So
The
like
thing is with murder, hunters also get something called improved slaying, which is merged after last year's
yeah.
class changes. But murder, like if you do the actual math on it, it's almost closer to 2.5% damage modifier, which is really good for like you never pick anything but it until you reach like AQ 40 and Nags.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad talent. Like it's more of like
Bad
the,
design.
the restriction feels weird of like specific mob types. Like I think something's that would give a similar amount. Yeah, sure, that'd be great for rogues. I mean, I don't know how it would affect balancing, but I think the mob tag type is just kind of a weird thing. It just feels weird.
Yeah, the same
Don't
goes
get
for
me wrong. I
hunters.
think
Because
I think
hunters,
talents that just say flat damage increase is just a bad design. Like you do X% more damage, 1 talent point, and you get to put 5 talent points into it. That's just not fun.
Well, that's mage's bread and butter.
Go ahead, Zoomer. Sorry.
oh yeah, I was gonna say because hunters, a slaying talent doesn't affect undead either. So like none of these like percentage modifier talents really work. And you don't really use them in Nax or AQ. For Nax, you maybe if you're like super sweaty like me, you respec in between bosses. So for like Fairlina and my Exna, I respec.
Yeah, I mean, as far as super sweat, I do that like because you can set up your respec bot with points left to spend, and so I leave two that I either put into improved eviscerate or I put into murder essentially, and then that I just hot swap right away into like, oh, we're doing Faralina, I'll do murder. Oh, we're doing and then okay, back to eviscerate, and yeah, it helps.
I actually do the exact same, but with 3 points because I only need 1 point in expertise normally, as a human with swords.
Oh yeah, that must be nice. As an orc rogue, it is what it is. I finally got Iblis as an offhand, so I finally for my DPS that didn't have to use Maladath to remain competitive. But when I tank, definitely still use Maladath, and it's not for the sword chance, for the sword bonus. It's for parry actually. So
That also helps you though, because you need the, as we said before, you need the extra hit chance because you're not gonna be behind targets. You're gonna miss a lot more.
yep, that's definitely true. And then more damage, less glancing blow penalty means more threat, which is really again our biggest weak spot.
And the parry also helps a lot too because of parry haze. Like on paper, parry is gonna be better than dodge because you're gonna proc more
Yeah.
riposts and you're gonna like get more swings off.
Whenever a hopeful rogue tank comes up to me and they tell me about like how to weigh stuff out, I'm always like, agility's king because that's your avoidance. And then I'll tell them, I'm like, dodge is good, but if you can, parry and defense is better, like pound per pound, versus dodge, because if you can get parries, you get ripostes. Ripostes are energy cheap and they give you a bunch more threat. And they also weaken the enemy. So it's like, it's a win all around.
And it's super easy to spec into riposte. You don't need to go all the way down to combat.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the meta build has you, take a bunch of combat and then you go into assassination just to get improved poisons, and then you take everything you can in combat pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's tons of different builds, and I started off saying how there's like different types of rogue tanking, and a lot of it's still unexplored to a large extent, which is really what I think is best about new content, exploring and figuring stuff out.
So a viewer here has a great question. What if there was a talent that made you gain threat whenever you made a defensive action like dodging or parrying?
Oh, sort of like a sort of like everybody is patchwork. That would really help solve the threat issue.
Yeah.
It doesn't solve the issues we have with taking regular magic damage, having no way to dodge magic damage with really no bonus stamina or mitigation, but that would really help. And in a way, it makes a lot of sense. Like even lore wise, like when you're dueling someone and they're dancing around you and like taunting you, like you're pissed. Like you're gonna tell me that like, oh, a tank shouts at you and like, oh, well, now I'm gonna attack this guy. But the guy who's like doing like handstands and flipping you off, like, no, that's not gonna anger you. Of course, it's gonna anger you. Yeah, put it in the game.
I wonder how that would work. That sounds like a really unique design. But I wonder if that would
Yeah.
like be like how would that work for AoE tanking?
You could
like for
perhaps just
instance, like,
merge it with setup, maybe. I feel like every time you
mm,
dodge, you gain a combo point and you do some extra threat. Or you do like some sort of counter attack.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
you're
What
already
if you had
rogues
like an
already have
offhand
problems with
attack that
AoE.
gave extra threat, something like that?
I think also
Um,
for another top or like another point for rogues, would adding Shiv as like Shiv as a baseline ability would first of all improve like just DPSing because rogues are like the class that uses the least button as a physical DPS class. It'll also improve threat because now you can fish for like these agitating poison procs and you have extra buttons to press.
Do you have a picture of Shiv for the viewers so they know what the spell does?
I can
yeah,
find
I
one real
don't.
quick.
I know what it does in Star Wars: The Old Republic, but I don't know what it does in WoW.
I'll put up a thing here.
Shout outs to all the operative lovers from Star Wars: The Old Republic.
So on screen you can see the tooltip for Shiv.
Oh, so a guaranteed poison proc.
And it's with the offhand weapon, that's why it's so cheap and has no cooldown.
Slower weapons require more energy.
I mean,
I don't know if you
that's
could code that.
that's smart from a game balance point because I mean, if you do have like a big, heavy, slow weapon, and you're like, well, I'm just gonna keep spamming Shiv. I'm sure someone probably figured out because I
Yeah,
think
imagine someone just dual wields MSAs and just spams that.
I'm just
I
not
mean,
sure how you would code it into V-Mangoes. I feel like if you just made
Yeah.
it maybe 35 energy and you fish for procs that way.
I feel like if it was 35 energy, I would just never use it over Sinister Strike, but that's just me.
Well, for
I mean,
Unless
you
I'm
could you could put a
PvPing and I
cooldown
want
on it. I
slower
mean, like
poison.
that would be a
yeah,
pretty. I mean, as a again, like we've talked about, like rogue tanks are pretty energy starved because the things we have to do to maintain our avoidance and all that stuff is already pretty energy intensive. So like, put it on a cooldown because like when you do subtlety tanking, like you do have to pool energy to use your ghostly strike, which is like I think like 50 energy. I can't quite remember, but it's more than sinister strike. I remember that.
yeah, I think rogue tanking is probably the topic that needs like the most adjusting because it just feels so starved and you realistically only press 2 buttons, which doesn't feel like super rewarding. I feel like.
But, if you're an adrenaline junkie, like I am evidently, you can sit there in front of Patchwork and go like, huh, I just did another flourish, but I got a bonus combo point. And I look around, hoping no one notices. And I'm like, well, I mean, a slice and dice won't hurt. Then you pop it and you're like, oh boy, I hope I get the next Sinister Strike to hit. Because if I don't, oh boy.
Yeah,
Yep.
we can take a
I'm pretty
look at.
sure you can also something that like I know it might be a bit sweaty, but I noticed that we aren't utilizing it. Is you should definitely, if you're not buff capped, you should definitely ask for an enhancement shaman to give you bloodlust on the pool, so you have more threat to begin with.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my team's been very receptive to that. I obviously when I'm like raid tanking one of those big bosses, like I am laser focused on my flourish timer, on my energy, and on my combo points. I pretty much don't look at anything else because that's all that matters right then. But I'll
Mhm.
find out like after the fact that like, hey, did you enjoy Bloodlust? I'm like, yeah, sure. like, yeah, I didn't notice it, but thank
Look,
you.
you
You
may
know.
not have noticed it, but the DPS who were like super under you in threat, they definitely noticed it.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, if anyone's used like you've noticed, Tawny, I'm usually asking right after. I'm like, hey, how did threat look? Because there are
Mhm.
some pretty big pumper warriors that are like under me that are like, you know, oh boy, you're in spot number 2. Hope you have less stamina than I do. And the people that do that usually are. And Resuvius is a different ball of wax, of course, because that's a zero sum game. If you do get ahead of me, you will die. But
Mhm.
I think for threat alone, just making poison stack with Wind Fury would be such a huge change, because Wind Fury is like one of the best DPS things you can get as a rogue. And for threat too, because more
yeah,
damage equals more, like, it's more swings, you get more poison procs, you fish for more sword spec procs if you use Maladeath. It just gives you way more threat.
I'd
yeah.
like I'd like some more support for poison in general, because as it is, I feel like rogues just get better off with the consecrated sharpening stones in
That's the funny
Extremis
thing,
sometimes.
actually. Deadly Poison, if you get the last tick with, like, if you get very good RNG with 5 stacks and you get the last tick right before the boss dies, it's technically better than Consecration Stones, but
Yeah, but
it's super
consecration
wonky.
on baseline will be better, like
Yeah.
90% of the time.
Yeah, for
It's the
trash, it's just.
argument for 1% haste versus 8 strength enchant for warrior helmet and pants. Like, yes, there is a scenario on a patchwork fight where 1% haste beats 8 strength on the sim, but in every other case ever, 8 strength beats 1% haste, so you really shouldn't, aim for the perfect scenario, because you're not gonna get it. It's not gonna happen every time.
It isn't perfect
Yeah.
design for sure, because, like, poisons is like the one unique thing you have as a rogue besides stealth, which isn't really unique because druids also have it, but you don't really use poisons because there's all these other things that are, like, way better.
I just found out recently, you don't have to be in stealth to use distract. I feel like that's pretty unique.
Oh, you didn't know? You can use them on
I,
pets in
I,
PvP. It's like a super
I
good
mean,
tactic.
like I said, like this is my first time playing Rogue, so like I pretty much learned about Rogue as it was introduced to me, and this is something that very few people know about me. But again, very new. I was in my first Ubers, right? And the raid leader said, "Okay, I need you to kidney shot those firecaster dragons," and I'm like, "Kidney shot? Uh, oh yeah, I think I learned that. Is that good?" And then I realized that I had leveled all the way from 1 to 60 without kidney shotting a single thing. And
Oh man.
I'm like, what? Did I just like make hardcore even harder? Apparently I did. I thought the
You did.
stun that rogues did was gouge. I honestly thought that was what they did.
Oh
I'm
wow.
like,
Yeah.
oh my god, dude. And now I'm like, oh shit, look at this kidney shot. This thing's fucking busted, dude.
Yeah, there are, as I said before, there are some spells that someone who are new to the class or to the game, they'll just not consider it, because they just, they hyper focus on their normal rotation. They want to get that down. And even that, for someone who's like new to the class or new to WoW, it's a very difficult thing to do. Many people don't even, like keybind all spells. They even click on some, and that's fine. That's a learning curve that everyone, has to get over eventually. But you can't, like, it's normal for some people to like have a learning curve, and there's nothing wrong with that.
You can understand why when you're like, hey, come on our little podcast thing, talk about rogues, and I'm like, uh, like I know about rogue taking stuff. I don't know if I can add a lot other things. And that was one of the first things I thought about. I'm like, oh man, what if they know about my kidney shot problem? Of course, Murdoch, who's only ever plays like priest, like she didn't know. And she's just like, huh, I thought rogues could stun more. And I also thought another stun. I did know about blind, but I was just like, oh, well, this is just like gouge, I guess. So like, why even keybind it? I didn't know. Blind's amazing, more for PvP, but like when you have to kill 2 things, blind is a great like, okay, buy me another 10 seconds spell. I never even thought about it until like I got into later content.
Even just like blinding into bandage if you need that extra last tick. With improved gouge, you normally
Yeah.
can just like gouge bandage, but if you need that very, very last tick, you can blind.
I actually just recently learned that like a way that like hardcore rogues level and deal with elite mobs is gouge throw kiting, where they will gouge a mob, run away from it, throw a weapon, run away, and once they have energy, they just gouge again, and then just repeat it until the mob dies. And if
Jesus
you
Christ,
spam
just
it,
play Hunter.
Well, the thing
and if you
is,
spam it before you reach the mob will never auto attack you.
does Gouge not have a DR on mobs? I know it has versus other
Nope.
players, and it shares with Sab.
I was watching a guy do this to kill some elite Dodo in the Barons that was like 2 levels above him, and he took like 0 damage.
That's interesting that it doesn't share or like have any DRs on mobs.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna show my
I think it
noviceness
has
here.
a DR, but he just like barely waited it out.
Does it? Yeah.
Well, the
Gouge
DR is like
builds
10
combo
seconds.
points, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
generates.
but you know, it's like the DR starts when you apply the effect, not when the effect ends, right?
Yeah, but the DR lasts long enough, and so that if you throw or gouge throw normally on, if you do it versus a human or a target like a player target.
So imagine we're talking about something like obviously I know what DR means, but let's just imagine someone in the chat doesn't know what DR means.
Okay.
Let's just explain it to them because I mean they would like to know.
Okay, so the DR stands for diminishing returns, and so it means if you for example, you either use polymorph or sap someone.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know about this from mages, yeah.
Yeah, so if you use it the first time, it's gonna last, like sap is gonna last 13 seconds-ish, and then it has a chance to break per second, which gets higher and higher. If you then use sap again right after they're unsapped, the duration is now like cut in half. And after 3 times, it just doesn't do anything. Like if you sap someone after 3 DRs, it just doesn't do anything, and you have to wait like 15 seconds.
Fun fact, this works with every CC, including polymorph, and in our Kel'Thuzad attempt in TAPC, I got polymorphed back-to-back 3 times while I was polymorphed, and I became immune to it, and I saw the particles appear around my character as I mercilessly murdered my friends while mind-controlled.
Oh no.
Oh, damn.
It's like
I
Gromdred who was
charged at
parsing.
1 gnome warlock, and I hit him for 7,000.
It's like Gromdred in our last Nax run. He had like the highest damage to other players during KT because he was getting MC'd and he's a red paladin.
Oh yeah, he one-shot our tank.
We got him the respect for like our last attempts to Holy just because he was like one-shotting us.
Yep. To be fair, usually if the control is fine, it's okay. But you know, sometimes there are new people in the raid. Sometimes people aren't paying attention. They break CCs, and for those cases, you know, it's hard. Kel'Thuzad is a hard boss in general.
There's a lot of bullshit mechanics for that fight. It's like all this RNG depending. Like if you get frostbladed into a red circle, you're just done. You're dead.
Yeah,
Should we?
KT was the fight where I figured out that.
So we just passed the 2-hour mark.
Oh shit!
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, KT was the fight where I found out that agility helps ranged attack power. Like I think in the back of my head I knew that, but I'm like, oh shit! When I shoot my little crossbow here, I really fuck up these skeletons. I'm looking around, I'm like, maybe I should just do more of this. So I made, like, when we were progging on KT, I made it my goal to have the most ranged attack damage under the hunters over everyone else.
Oh my. Yeah, I had the same kind of thing last week because I got Nerubian Slave Maker on my rogue. My hunter doesn't have it. I also have I have the Doomshot arrows on my rogue. So I was just trying to see how much I could crit for. And like, I was critting for like 600-700 with a crossbow as a rogue.
Right? Like,
it's insane.
Nuts. You're like, okay, like I know I'm not a hunter, but like I feel like this is good. Like, you know, so, you know, for what it's worth, the one thing rogue tanks do have in their pocket is that if we're pulling a single target, we'll have a lot of threat.
Yeah.
I believe every single melee, like every physical class, gains 2 attack power per agility, so that's why rogues and warriors also hit very hard with bows.
Warriors only
have, like,
only get crit though from agility.
Let me double check.
On ranged attack?
On ranged,
I have this pinned on ranged attack. Yeah, so melee it's 1, but for ranged it's 2 attack power per agility.
Yeah.
No, never mind. Sorry. Rogues and warriors gain 1 ranged attack power per point and agility. Hunters gain 2 ranged attack power per point of agility.
Yeah, that's right.
Of course, as a rogue tank, you've stacked so much agility. I mean, you're slapping those things with those little pea shooters.
Oh yeah, it's really fun too. Just like the funny thing is, it does like those crits I did this week with Nerubian. Does it like it does the same amount of damage as like a 4-point deadly throw.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I love that stuff. And like you know, like when you do the A bombs in the ones you have to FAP for. If you
Yeah,
don't, you know, have some sort of super sweaty team that's cleaving them down in 5 seconds, you know, there's a good chance your FAP's going to run out. And if your FAP runs out, well, then, you know, like you don't want to stand in melee range. So I'll just stand back and shoot a couple times. And I'm like, see, I'm still contributing.
yeah, that is super fun. I don't really do that. The thing I do is like I try to kite around the stun. So like I do a couple swings, then run out, wait for the stun, then go back in. But both works,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
course.
yeah. You learn that if you don't have FAPs and you're in BWL because of those
Yeah.
big Dragon Guard guides. You're like, don't need FAPs. I'm just gonna navigate around this thing that's gonna one shot me.
I think before we end the stream, we should maybe look at my forum post I made for like rogue stuff. So I made a really big post, and I basically just like came up with a bunch of ideas and reworks for certain talents and stuff for like every talent almost. So one of the like for assassination, one of the big ones was like merging improved poisons and vile poisons. Yeah. So you merged improved poisons and vile poisons, so it does 40% or like 20% more damage while also increasing the proc chance by 10% with like 5 points.
Yeah, I mean that would be good.
I see.
I do want to add quickly about the threat poison. We did learn that threat poison it isn't based on the damage of the poison. So doing vile poisons doesn't help your threat. It's just a flat amount of threat. So if you're ever speccing into that stuff, just take improved poisons because you're not going to get anything extra from vile poisons other than the additional regular damage from the poison.
Because the proc is like 300 threat or something. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, so someone did the math. I'm not great with numbers, but yeah, I just figured I'd throw that in there.
I also added in Venom here, actually, and the find weakness thing I was talking about earlier. So you can see in Venom is like it consumes your stacks of deadly poison to instantly just deal damage based on combo points. Then you have find weakness, which is like this thing where like when you use a finisher, it then like exposes a weakness to the target and like increases damage done for a certain amount of seconds.
Oh yeah, and speaking of exposing on the server, a lot of the armor values are pushed up, or sometimes your warriors are glue eaters and don't do sunder. Improved exposed armor does have a spot, and it is very valuable in raids.
Oh yeah,
it's really strong. It's actually just insane how good it is. People don't really fully understand armor values in the game until they do a couple raids with like bosses with 0 armor versus bosses with like 1000 armor, and you'll just see like how warriors double dip from that, especially. And warriors will skyrocket in damage on bosses that have like 0 armor because they
You love
generate
seeing
more
Hagen
rage.
with 0 armor.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I feel like it is again different topic, but I wish that they made like a more standardized version of armor reduction, just so that armor penetration remains something that's good on trash, but isn't necessary for boss from itemization. Because
Yeah, yeah.
it makes the game really hard to balance, where like some guilds have improved expose armor, some don't. Some guilds require all the warriors to use annihilator, some guilds don't. You know, it's rough for both players and for the devs to balance a game where values are completely different between raid teams.
So, is find weakness like an ability you have to proc, or is that just any finishing move like just does that?
it's just any finishing move. It's from TBC. So like the thing with TBC was you had all these like off spec talent trees in vanilla. In TBC they made it so like almost every talent tree has like some sort of like raid wide debuff it adds when you do certain things.
You know, TBC certainly was the expansion that made everyone have something they can bring to the table.
Yeah, every spec could basically bring something to the raid, so like everybody was kind of welcome.
The way I understood it is that TBC was the expansion that made every class, or at least tried to make every spec or class be as intuitive as Fury Warrior is on Vanilla. Like, they gave everyone like one extra button to press, and they gave everyone a utility, so you wouldn't ever say, no, you can't join us as a sub-rogue, no, you can't join us as an arms warrior.
Meanwhile, all the Beastmaster hunters are just laughing in TBC while pressing their one button. Right, and I added Mutilate here too, but we talked about it and Shiv.
Yeah.
You can see the
And
red
again,
tilted for
Mutilate with
Mutilate here.
different energy and damage values. It's the idea. Don't look at the numbers, look at the idea behind the spell.
So, something that I thought, from a rogue tank perspective, that previous one, Expose Weakness, something that would be really cool is if, because this is like my little soapboxing, it would love if they just gave a talent that allowed rogues to have like a better threat situation, period. And it would be great if you do a finisher and now like your threat, maybe rather than damage, like your threat goes up, or like your damaging abilities have a threat modifier on them. Like that could be a very easy way of doing it. I don't know how easy it is to make threat modifiers on things. I can just talk out of my ass about that, but yeah, I could definitely see something like even as simple as that being an option.
Making a finisher that maybe works kind of like Mocking Blow. It's like not a real taunt, but it taunts the target-ish. It just gives a huge amount of threat. That would be really cool,
I think stances would be also like imagine a stance that just increases the rogue's threat generation and increases your dodge chance by like 5% or something, and in return you can't use Vanish, and you could call it like, I don't know, like aggressive combatant or something. Like the idea would be that you sacrifice your option to run away and live, like you can't use Vanish and sprint, and in return you get more threat and you get more dodge chance.
Man, I
you
have
kinda go
to say
all
that's a
in
great
a
idea.
way.
That's a great idea because every time I do rogue tanking stuff, especially in raid, but the last step I do is I click and I drag my Vanish off of my
I
guard
was
because I'm like,
thinking about
I
the
don't
same.
ever want to accidentally click that and be like, well, now I have no threat, so enjoy.
Yep.
I saw a lot of like I've talked a lot with other rogues on the TWoW server, and it's like a lot of people want to see like a way to make stealth work in combat if you like spec into subtlety and like be able to use those
Like
openers.
Shadowlands?
Kind of, yeah. So you had like people who make it kind of like work around talents and make it so if like you do this and this, you can now enter stealth for like 2 seconds or use stealth abilities for like 2 seconds.
I think they could also just adopt the future retail decision of just making Garrote not require stealth.
Look, Road is really useless, yeah. I did also
Yeah,
mention...
but make it like be a useful spell first, of course.
Yeah, I did mention like bleeds and poisons and eviscerate, like in general, should scale way better. Eviscerate doesn't scale at all, and Garrote and Rupture scale by almost nothing.
Yeah, I remember getting my 5 of 5 2.5 set and being like, oh man, there's like a bonus on eviscerate, and like I'm like, oh, I'll spec into eviscerate. Then I talked to my class lead Fugger, and he's like, yeah man, eviscerate's really not that good, don't worry about it. I'm like,
yeah,
oh.
It's actually just a filler ability for like your DPS rotation.
Yeah, and that's why improved exposed armor really isn't that big of a hit. Like if you can do it, just do it, because your other options, like a standard combat rogue, like you get up slice and dice as much as possible. You have a middle filler one that could be eviscerate, and then that's like kind of what you do. So
yeah, because in classic, like the average drop off you got from going exposed armor was like 80 to 120, and that was with world buffs. Like the difference is way smaller now we don't have it. I want to touch on the one I mentioned here, sleight of hand. So my new suggestion for it was, it's basically reduces the chance you're critically hit by a melee and range attacks by 1 to 2%, which is already what it is. But now it also like reduces the chance of like pickpockets getting resisted, which kind of fits the name.
Cool. That's cool.
This will sound controversial, and this will sound like a really dumb idea, and it is a dumb idea, but like, am I the only rogue that thinks we should be able to pickpocket players?
I think there are already a couple add-ons out there that give you like random /e emotes that you pickpocketed X amount of gold from player next to you.
Man, like
But that's not
I'm
the
not
same, of
saying
course.
like I don't want to rob like gold off people, like just something that shows like I grabbed a couple copper from you, you know, and you can't repeat it on a person for like 10 minutes. Like just something like that, man. Oh, you know, you talk about like silly talents that really are just for RP. Something like that. I saw sleight of hand and I'm like, oh man, I'd love to go into like Stormwind and then pickpocket someone and then just be like, hey, got your money, and then
You just
vanish.
have people like Camp Alice every time she's online.
Oh yeah, she's
Release
loaded.
just,
Yeah.
yeah. I do think something like that would be cool for like something that I really like is that I think there was a glyph. I don't know if you're familiar with glyphs. They were like these
Yeah, I played a little
altars.
bit of Wrath.
Yeah, so there was a glyph, and I think what it did is that when you pickpocketed the mob, your character became like you took that target's appearance for 5 minutes.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So,
I mean
you
they
would like pickpocket the Raikou, and you would become a big Raikou for a few minutes. It was
I,
really fun.
I will say that for anyone who doesn't know, TWoW did reintroduce the other secret rogue profession of disguises.
Oh yeah.
You have to find the disguise vendors all over Azeroth. You find them, and then you need like some sort of like almost like a reagent to make it, and then you can't fight in it. I think the second you fight in it, falls away. But as far as RP goes, that's pretty fun. Like I can walk around looking like a Dalaran wizard or like a pirate or something. That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
The issue just is that like as soon as you like press your mount button or any ability, the disguise just goes over. Even if you get hit. But yeah, it is really fun.
You know, heightened senses. You know that has rogue tank implications. You know, certainly, and I like the concept because I think there's some stuff in the subtle tree already that does this, but it's like it looks like a subtlety thing, but it could also help you if you're a rogue tank, you know, like the what is it, like improved feint, like I've mentioned before. Like, yeah, this is for someone that wants to drop their threat, but it gives you like a damage mitigation bonus. So like something with heightened senses, like the way you have it written here, you know, increases your stealth detection. That's more of a PvP thing, really, but
Yeah.
it also reduces your chance to be hit by spells and range attacks. But it's like, well, that would be great, you know? Like, okay, so like double dipping on abilities would be great.
So the ability tooltip is how it is in game right now. I wrote it so like I came up with the suggestions of like when you get hit by a lethal spell or range attack, you have it like 10 to 20% chance, just to make it fair, you know, to reduce the chance you're hit by anything for like by 15% for 5 seconds or so.
Well, like I say that mostly because the red part of it says you need 20 points in subtlety, and man, like going all that way to get heightened senses hurts when like there's other things you can be doing for threat generation. It's like this is great, but it's not that good because you have to go so deep, you know, just to get it.
It's the same thing with hemorrhage. Looking aside the fact that the stacks could use up instantly when you use it, it's just so far down subtlety. You don't really see people picking it.
Yep, and I mean, there's a world where you can use it because there's a higher debuff, but like it's just a straight up DPS loss usually for the rogue, you know. And I always encourage people to play what they think is fun, but you know, if you're trying to do the most damage you can, hemorrhage isn't the best option.
Even if you're looking to just support other players, it's not really like gonna do a lot because the 30 stacks are like gone instantly if you have warriors in your raids.
Yeah. I did do it once. It was hilarious. I'm like, huh, where'd my hemorrhage go? I put it on again. Huh, where'd my hemorrhage go?
Yeah. So another thing I added here was like changing deadliness from increasing your attack power by X percentage to either increasing your armor penetration or your agility.
Sounds very... Well, you know my stance on these is that I dislike talents that just give you a flat-out X% damage increase. I find them to be boring and just lacking imagination.
Not to mention confusing, because sometimes, like at the top of the shaman tree, there's like the increases your mana by 5%. You're like, oh, sweet, and you're like, huh, I got 15 extra mana.
Yeah,
like,
it's space mana for that one. Yeah, at least for deadliness,
exactly.
it's like total, which is nice. The same thing goes for
Yeah.
the hunter talent in survival. Lightning reflexes, which increases your agility by like 15%.
Does the orc one do that? The orc racial? I don't even know.
Yeah, the orc one
Official
goes
is
off your
just
base
the-
attack power, so the strength and the agility you get as a rogue, or just strength as a warrior, plus your base attack power.
Oh, that's why people like doing orc rogues.
So the issue actually is with Blood Fury. There's a bug right now where like Earthstrike, Jumgabar, and Slayer's Crest don't stack if you use Blood Fury. Or
Is
Blood...
that a bug? I thought that it only meant to increase your like base stats and not the ones
Well,
you get from items.
Well,
That's what Malrock said.
Well, the report I made is so that it's like it shows Archimonde, he uses Slayer's Crest and then he uses Blood Fury, but Blood Fury doesn't do anything after while he has the Slayer's Crest buff. And like the other way around, it's the same thing. You only get the first one and the other one just doesn't add anything, which is a bug. It definitely shouldn't scale, but they should stack, is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, something that we haven't touched on, but it's super requested. TPC or future combo point system, aka you don't lose combo points if you target to kick someone or tap target or whatever.
Oh, dude, please. Every other private server has this. And it's
they teased us. They teased us about it too. If you were here for like when they were talking about class changes, they're like, yeah, this is like one of the ones we're hoping to do, and then it didn't come out, and I was like, damn it.
It's the same with surprise attacks. They teased it and put it in like the forum post, but we never got to see it. I don't know if you remember surprise attacks. It's basically like a 10-second cooldown, 30 energy ability. You can't dodge it, and it gives a combo point. Pretty much, that's all it does.
Oh, okay. That's I could definitely see a world where you can weave that in.
Yeah, you just make a macro like use surprise attacks and then sinister strike in that priority. So every time like surprise attacks is off cooldown, you just use sinister strike.
Well, much like how warriors have overpower that can't be dodged. Like if you're doing tanking as a rogue, like you would like something to not be dodged, because sometimes you're just getting parried and dodged a lot and you're like, damn it, I need to hit you.
Yeah. We're almost coming up on the 2-hour 40 mark.
Keep going? Yeah, let's keep going. Tricks of the Trade. This is one that I requested Zoomer put in, and I won this spell in the game yesterday. I want this and Misdirect to be accessible for players who are doing raiding, because it has... I could go on all day to tell you how good it is, but instead I'll just list 3 scenarios. Scenario number 1, you have a new tank, and he's anxious about tanking, he's not that geared, and he's super focused on survival. He's going to be lacking in threat. Because new tanks are always, they are trying to not die because dying makes you look bad, but in return, they don't have the capabilities to hold threat as well as seasoned tanks who will sacrifice defense and stamina for more crit and hit for better consistent threat. So Tricks of the Trade is a spell that would allow the rogue to transfer his threat to any target. This would help tanks, this would help all kinds of tanks. This would even enable paladin and shaman tanks who are probably not as good as threat as like other classes. This would also support rogue tanks, as like your non-rogue tanks could band together behind a big strong rogue tank and give them even more threat. This spell is something that would help everyone, and I can't see a single downside to it.
I definitely I agree with you. Like it would make a lot of sense. At this point where we are in the game, we don't have a misdirect from hunters. I would say that hunters should probably also get something like this as well. I know this isn't about hunters, but usually if you don't have a hunter who's available to pull, a lot of times a rogue can back up, especially in a raid setting. When we were progressing AQ40, we didn't have a reliable hunter who wanted to do the pull on Cthulhu. On TWoW, if you have a vanish and a gear swapper, you can queue up a gear swap, do a vanish, and you can swap gear. So I would actually pull as a rogue Cthulhu, take the beams with my nature resistance gear, vanish, and then put on my DPS gear and run in. So I think classes that have the ability to drop combat, it's pretty much just rogues and hunters, should also have an ability to put threat on another target. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it would just be good for like the utility of a class.
I agree on that. I also added a filler spell here for rogue tanking. I just came up with like an RP thing for it. So it's called Insult, costs 20 energy, and it just verbally insults the target, increases your threat by like a large amount. It has like an 8-second cooldown and also adds a combo point. And I feel like with surprise attacks, you have 2 filler spells while also using like Sinister Strike and Flourish and Slice and Dice.
I mean, that would go very well with like the lore of like a rogue tank, because like when you think in your mind, you have like in your brain like a swashbuckler, someone who's like dancing around and like, yeah, they're gonna make fun of you and like you're gonna want to attack them. Like that would
Yeah.
be perfect for a taunt,
It's like the you can't hit me kind of trope.
Exactly.
And
I'd
like
love if
every
someone
time
like
the person misses, he gets more and more annoyed. So maybe you could tie some mechanic to it, like maybe give a rogue a cooldown that like maybe use insult. Insult increases the target's movement and attack speed by like 20%, so that you can have some drawback to it in a way, and also
yeah.
fit
So,
more thematically as a lore. But like
so
if you're
you're
dodging everything, it doesn't matter. It actually is a gain, because the faster he attacks, the faster you dodge, so the more combo points you get on the target.
Oh yeah, and you would have a macro for insult into evasion to be like, okay, I'm gonna get a bunch of threat on this guy, and then we'll be good to start DPSing.
they should definitely add the chicken sound when you use Insult though. Like every time you use it, you
Oh
just
my
go,
god.
"Bark, bark, bark."
Or just the slash
It's
goof
right there.
sound.
Yeah. Yeah, just macro it, man. Or make like an add-on that just like does like these like kid insults.
This
Like
actually
just yelling
reminds
the
me.
guy has smelly feet or something.
I used to play with a guy who was his first time ever playing was on TWoW, and I like leveled with him from 1 to 60. Celius, shout out to you if you ever watched this. He was super obsessed with WoW, and he got the pirate hat, and he wanted to make a pirate warrior, and he keybound /yell yar to his taunt. It was amazing.
Oh, dude, that's nice. Yeah,
And he would
definitely.
like queue AV, and people would like let the captain come and tank him. It's
Yeah, dude, I
amazing stuff
love
from the
macroing
roleplay server.
insults to like just doing like random like insults every time I use it. I think that's pretty much like the key points I made in my forum post, because all the rest here is just like quality of life stuff.
I have something haven't mentioned and just want to throw it out there. If you're ever watching, please make Blade Flurry baseline. It feels like it's a mandatory thing for the game
Oh.
if I ever want to do things, and I don't want to spec into combat every time just to have it, please.
On that topic, we should probably look at what I wrote about Blade Flurry. So instead of having it talented, it's like the talent is going to improve the thing. So Blade Flurry baseline would just be like a cleave with a 20-second cooldown. And then the talented improved Blade Flurry would just increase the attack speed instead of having the attack speed like baseline. That's
And
pretty much it.
you strike an additional target, so you would cleave 3 mobs?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Or just make it so you get an extra attack. So if you use it with a 1 point, you get 3 attacks instead of 2.
Yeah, is there anything else we want to mention, haven't gotten the time to? Because we can about wrap this up.
I really think all the rest is pretty much just like quality of life and like changing all these RNG dependent talents. I guess there's
Alright.
Master of Subtlety, but that's about it. It just make it so you deal a bit more damage when you come out of stealth for 6 seconds.
Yeah, that's...
Guess that's pretty much all there is for my post. We could probably wrap it up here. It's almost been 3 hours.
Yeah, I would normally ask for viewer Q&A, but I think people, kind of lost focus after 2.5 hours, so I'll just ask anyway.
People.
I'll just ask anyway if anyone in the chat has any questions to ask or wants to share something that, devs watching might eventually, be curious about. But if not, then I think we can wrap up. I'll just wait like a couple minutes for chat to catch up.
While we're waiting, I do want to shout out the people that have been whispering me in Discord. Love you people. Also want to shout out Kuyu, who's a mage in my guild.
Happy birthday, Koyu!
If you look at my profile picture, behind the lettering, that was might have been computer painted, but but painted by QU, who's a very talented artist. Any commissioners out there, look up QU. He does great work.
The profile picture is actually really awesome. I remember when I downloaded it to add it to the overlay, it was like really high quality and like super huge. I had to downsize it by a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah. He did great work. He just like randomly posted it in our arts and crafts channel, and I'm like, dude, dude, please, can I use this?
Well, you
feel
also has a very active Twitter page, but we don't want the young turtles going there because it's not for the young turtles.
No,
But it's like
no.
Tawney and you have like your own profile pictures. I just googled cat gif and I used that. I think we can wrap up the stream here. It's a good time to cut
let's
it off
wrap
here.
it up.
Thanks everybody for joining in, and I hope to see you all next week. The topic is gonna stay a surprise for now, so
Definitely not because we don't know what it's gonna be about.
definitely not because you don't know what it's gonna be.
And thanks, guys, for having me on, and thanks for being willing to talk about the very niche world of rogue tanking. I love talking about it. It's great. As always, thank you, Guru, for helping pioneer that. And for anyone who is interested in news about TWoW, you can check out my my YouTube for Vrograg. It's just the channel's Vrograg Fish Slayer. I doubt anyone has that tag, so look it up sometime and enjoy some TWoW news.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll have a link in the description for his channel.
Let's go, Zoomer!
But yeah, thanks for coming, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good
See
night
ya.
or day.